There we go. Can you tell it's been a while since I've streamed? Here we go. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hey, Tretren. Hello, Hero. Hello, Kale. Hello, Anna. Hello, Red Erlenmeyer. Hello, Deep Sheep 6. That's a great name. Hello, FNA Melname. Hello. Hey, Clockwork. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Aleph. Hello, hello, Reunite. Hello. Yeah, it's been a hot second since I've streamed, and today we have a passionate topic by me. It is the art of science writing, specifically for edutainment, although there will be a crossover with more formal styles of writing. I'm really passionate about writing. If you couldn't tell, my channel is really, in terms of breaking down what I'm proud of about my channel, is I'm really happy and proud with the scripts that I have written. The animations, I'm very happy and proud of what Toxo has come up. But for me, the heart and soul of this channel are the words that I choose to use, right? And if you are here, it likely means that to some degree you enjoy the words that I choose, and I'm here to tell you how to choose good words, or not exactly the words that I would choose, but how to develop your own sense of what words you should choose. Because a lot of this presentation is not about how do you do science writing correctly. It is more about talking through the concepts, principles, and mechanics of writing so that you can develop your own voice, but making sure to address some core aspects of this writing. All right. I get mispronounced all the time. I do not blame you, though, as even TTS gets my name wrong. Oh, let me know how to pronounce your name then. All right. Okay, so here's an agenda. It's a bit of a long agenda that I've also kind of restructured a couple of different times. So we'll start off by talking about what is effective science communication. I actually like avoiding the term good and bad, because good and bad imply like a moral judgment, and it's also a bit of a thought terminating cliche. Something is good, it makes you happy. Something is bad, it means it's bad. But effective is more of an efficient word, because effective can be good, effective can also be bad. Effective is anchored to the intention of the author, right? So if you intend for a certain effect, then it can be rated as effective or ineffective, but it has a level of intentionality behind it, unlike good and bad, which is very, very simple. Then we're going to talk about appeal. So every sci-comm versus technical writing. Sorry, let me get to that first. So I want to make a delineation between science communication, which is what my YouTube channel is, and technical writing, which is stuff that professionals will do, researchers and stuff. And then we'll talk about appeal. Appeal is the starting point to all rhetoric writing classes. So we'll go through what appeals those are. And then we're going to get into some meaty stuff. So the thing I didn't like about my writing classes was that a lot of it was so theoretical, but in this stream we're actually going to be breaking down writing in a very nitty-gritty kind of hands-on kind of way, which I think is a lot more fun than just talking about logos and ethos and stuff like that. So that includes 3 pillars is what I'm going to call them: clarity, narrative, and style. And you'll see kind of how these differ. And then we're going to talk specifically about style, mostly comparing my style to Clockwork's style. Clockwork in chat, another fantastic mole bio YouTuber, and talking about, like, again, I am not here to tell you how to write, but rather to set you on a path where you can find your own voice, because Clockwork is great. I wouldn't change the words that he uses, but they're also not words that I would use. And I want to analyze the ways in which we have developed our own voice. Then I'll talk a little bit about process, and I kind of have a weird process that I like to write with. And then a framework for effective feedback. So I think we've been doing feedback wrong in terms of writing and art in general, and I want to show you how I interact with art. And then we're going to get into some samples that the community has submitted for us to break down for communication. And I think that that's going to be really fun for me because I had a blast reading those entries. So thank you so much if you have submitted. Yeah. How to talk smartly. Exactly. If you like the way I talk, if you like the way I write, this is the stream for you. Rye, or the rye part of rice. Ah, okay. Ryanite then. All right. Thank you so much. I'll try to remember that. Hey, Comey, welcome. Miss Renala, hello, first time here. Welcome. I believe someone else, it was the first time as well, right? Sorry, I had missed your name. Oh, it was FNA Mel name. Yeah, awesome. Are we also going to discuss presentations? The principles here will be applicable to presentations as well. Although don't take my streams as a way to make your own presentations, because I have 100+ slides here, because streams are entertainment. They're not academic, they're not concise. They're for your entertainment and enjoyment. So you can take some of these ideas and use them in your presentations, but I'll maybe have a different stream just for presentation, because I'm very opinionated on how you should have your slides. It's in fact my first time as well. Oh, awesome, Aleph. Welcome. I love both yours and Clockworks' style. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to show you what I think, where we differ, and break those down in words. If science communication writing style is similar to fiction writing, then I have a feel that style is also something developed over time. Yes, and I talk a lot about that when I get to style. Okay, but first, what is effective science communication? In no particular order, it is to get the audience to understand a set of principles / ideas / facts / discoveries, right? You are a science communicator, you are commuting science. 2, to get the audience to stay to the end, right? Your work means nothing if your audience leaves, so you need to develop strategies to keep them paying attention. And 3, to get the audience to look forward to your next piece, right? If you are trying to do this for a profession, then you have to, and I'm still working this out myself, right? I would like to eventually make enough money on YouTube for this to be my full-time job, but that doesn't stop this from being an important aspect of developing your craft as a writer. Okay. So these principles have a lot to do with clarity. So we're going to be developing clarity in our writing. It has to do with engagement, so making sure that your writing is engaging. And if you want an audience to come back to you and remember who you are as a writer, then you have to develop style as well. So we'll go through all of these during this presentation. Okay, so the important thing to note, I want to open up here with, is that technical writing and science communication are different, and so you should treat them differently, right? In undergraduate, you are likely going to be doing a lot of technical writing if you are a STEM major, and this type of writing is meant for professionals to read. The primary goal is to ensure that information is correctly understood, right? It's not to depict reality, right? As weird as that sounds, the purpose of your professional writing is to make sure the audience understands you, not to get the information correct. Although you have to get that information correct for it to be good. In terms of which words you choose, you should choose the words that allows your audience to understand your meaning. And that's a little bit subtle, but it is important. The secondary goal is to make sure that the arguments are presented convincingly, right? Oftentimes, technical documents are making arguments, trying to convince other scientists that your science is like good and rigorous and stuff. So the audience already has a motivation to read your work. It's all about making that process as easy as possible for them, which again is different than content creation, right? It's different than content creation. The primary goal is to make the reading easy, because your audience is going to finish reading your paper anyway, right? Like, say, for example, I am a yeast cell biologist studying the actin network in yeast. You already know that other yeast actin scientists are going to read your work top to bottom. You don't have to make it fun or exciting for them. You just need to make it easy for them to read. Right? Sci-comm is different because sci-comm is meant for non-professionals and the goals are different. It's to make sure that the audience remains engaged not only with your piece but also with the science in general. So sci-comm is also different than teaching, right? I wouldn't say that I'm a teacher in this current capacity. My previous job, I was a teacher, but on YouTube, I am not your teacher, because for sci-comm, narrative and engagement are on par with clarity. They're all equally important. And concision, as in the ability to say a few words and mean a lot, is now a stylistic choice, right? In a technical document, you have to be concise. Journals will often punish you for using too many words. And also, your expert audience doesn't care for the extra work it requires to digest more words, right? They just want the facts. They want it quick as possible. So choosing fewer words is going to be a strategic choice, a stylistic choice for sci-comm. So keep that in mind. So we live in an attention economy. You must reach out and meet your audience where they want to be. You need to make your writing attractive, appealing, engaging. Otherwise, people are just going to, swipe, and that sucks, right? So how do we accomplish that, right? In my opinion, even though I'm making this delineation between the two, starting from technical writing, if you have the chance to take a technical writing class, is very, very, very useful. I was often complimented in my English classes for the rigor of my writing. Like, oh, you write surprisingly well for a STEM major. And I said, that shouldn't be a surprise, because if you took a technical writing class, you get all of the tools you need to communicate information accurately, concisely and clearly, which is the backbone of sci-comm, right? They don't get as much of that in humanities writing classes, weirdly enough. But in STEM writing classes, you get to cut out all the fat and go direct, go for the throat, as it were, in terms of communicating your ideas, which is very useful. So I highly recommend it. So sci-comm and teaching are different. I want to emphasize this point. Teaching is more interactive. On the right here, I have a stream that Mylan did, Psychology Stats 101. This is lecture 5 in probability. This is teaching, because teaching is higher stakes. It's interactive as well, right? The teacher must have an understanding of whether or not you've understood the correct content. Whereas over here, my video on prions, this is sci-comm. I don't care if you remember what a prion is. It would be cool if you did, right? But I don't really care. I'm here to tell you the story of prions, and if you don't remember that they are alpha helixed and then convert into beta sheets, I'm not going to blame you for that. I'm not going to consider that a failure for me. What's important in a piece of sci-comm is that you paid attention and you enjoyed the story. But if I were a teacher, I would have to quiz you. I would have to ask you for your understanding. It's a more iterative, back and forth relationship. So do not consider me a teacher. Consider me a science communicator, right? So this is a quick aside, because I've gotten this comment a lot on YouTube. I've gotten, I wish my teachers were more like you. I wish you were my teacher, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thing. That's really insulting to your teachers, and I think you should respect them more. Your teacher has a much more important / harder job than I do, right? I don't have to care that you actually understood the material. I don't have to care about your career readiness. I don't have to care about your growth as a human, although I do abstractly care, right? I would say on stream is where I do my teaching, but for my videos, which most, if you're watching me and you're not watching my videos, that's kind of weird. Although that is a compliment, I guess, in terms of if you really enjoy these streams. But on video, I am a communicator, I'm an entertainer. On these streams, I'm much more in the realm of a teacher, because this relationship is two ways. What's the point of distinguishing the two? It's important because I think there are some people who want to do sci-comm but can't tell how to do it, because they're either teaching when they should be communicating, or they're communicating when they want to be teaching. So this is for people who can't decide between the two, right? If you want to teach, then teach. Then you have to market your thing as teachable. You have to market your thing in a completely different way. If you want your content to be popular, though, then it's a different incentive, right? If you are trying to make content for students, then you can cut all the crap. You don't have to make it entertaining. You just have to make it very clear and rewatchable. Because as a student, you want something like Khan Academy. You want something that is very quick, something that you can rewatch very easily, something that doesn't take too much of your time, but you get maximum value. And that's going to be a very different approach to making an entertaining piece of science communication. That's why it is important to distinguish the two, because if you are not clear about that difference, then you're going to either make a bad piece of teaching material where it's too wordy, it's too confusing, it's, a little cringe for a student, or you're going to make something too hard for a casual audience who is there for a story. So pick your lane and then go hard in that lane is what I would recommend. I also studied and engaged with the topic for months, while your teacher has to summarize that research inside a single 60-minute class. teacher will get you to a way more comprehensive understanding. Exactly, right? Your teacher's job is more important than my job. My job is so that you stay in school and stay paying attention in your classes, so that your teacher can do the slam dunk and actually get you to learn something. If you learn something from my videos, that's a side effect. That's not actually my primary motivation here. My primary motivation is for you to care about biology so that you can learn about it later. Yeah. So the only thing that I am capable of teaching you in the video is how to love biology. That's it. That's my only ability in video format. I can teach you how to love biology, but I can't teach you anything about biology because I can't get in your head and make sure you understood it. Okay? Selling an idea is easier than actually understanding it. I agree with that to some point too, because I feel like when people watch my videos, I make it so easy for them that they may overestimate their retention, right? Because as I'll show you some tricks, you can really make ideas flow very naturally and cause your audience minimal stress. But if you're a student, you need stress, right? A student needs to be quizzed. They need projects, they need homework, they need to actively engage with the material. And as a YouTuber, I don't ask you to do any of that. So it is a higher burden in the classroom. So I should not be a substitute. I can be a complement, but not a substitute. What about a sci-fi comm, like an explanation and writing style from the perspective of a fictional character? It's a little adjacent, but in terms of if you want to communicate a concept seamlessly for an audience who is not going to rewatch your material to take a quiz or a test, the similar concepts still apply. Okay, so I will be demonstrating 3 layers of meta contextual writing. Going from left to right, we have abstract ideas, and then on the right, we have granular practice. So we're going to get both, right? We're going to talk about the theory, we're going to put it in practice, we're going to show you how sentences work and fit together and what purpose sentences have. So the most abstract thing we're going to be talking about is appeal, which is omnipresent in a work. And then something in the middle is like narrative, which is a strategy to have between paragraphs, and then clarity, which can happen on the layer of individual words to individual sentences to the construction of paragraphs themselves, right? So there are layers to this writing, right? Every time I make a script, I am building you a multi-layered cake with many different ingredients. And, you know, a lot of thought gets put into these scripts because I care a lot about the quality of my work. So narrative is actually the hardest to talk about. So we're going to talk about appeal, then we're going to talk about clarity, and then we're going to talk about the hardest thing to think about, which is narrative. Narratology, let's freaking go. Yeah, exactly. I love narrative in writing, and we're gonna see how that works. So every science writing class I've ever took as an undergrad started with this idea, which I'm not going to spend too much time on because I think it's kind of boring and not that interesting. But in terms of building a base to think about appeal in writing, there are principally 3 appeals. This comes from old Greek times: logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is an appeal to logic, ethos is an appeal to authority, and pathos is an appeal to emotion, right? And these 3 wings come into play with a lot of different pieces of science writing. However, different types, different genres of writing demand different proportions of these appeals, right? If you're writing a science paper, a lot of your appeal is going to come from the logic of your paper. Some of it comes from the ethos. So, if you're published in Nature, then your audience is going to automatically kind of suspect that your paper is pretty good. And not a whole lot on pathos, because a science paper is written for other scientists. They're not going to care as much about the emotion behind the writing. For a health communicator, say, there's an outbreak of a disease, then you want a little bit of logos, right? You want to make sure that whatever health communication you do passes the sniff test. There's going to be a lot of ethos, right? If the WHO, is warning, the WHO recently published a statement saying that there's no safe amount of alcohol to consume. I trust the people at the WHO. I don't consume alcohol to begin with, but now I'm extra motivated to not consume alcohol, right? And a little bit of pathos, because health communicators have to be very conscious and aware and understanding of people's heightened emotions when it comes to their health, right? So there's a little bit of a mix of each in there as well. Isn't pathos, ethos, logos more about convincing people? It is. And in every piece of science writing, you are doing some amount of convincing. Even in edutainment, right? You are convincing the reader or audience member to stay with you to the end. That is the primary goal of science communication, is to remain engaged, which is a bit of argumentation as well, like a negotiation in a bit. Yeah. Isn't sci-comm nothing but convincing people of your ideas / concepts? Not necessarily, right? I'm making the delineation that that's not meaningfully different than teaching. Sci-comm, as I'm interpreting it, is more about retention and a retention of your engagement, right? A person that, a writer for the Atlantic, for example, when they are publishing a piece, their goal is to actually get you to finish reading, right? There's a capitalist incentive for that, but also like a spiritual one as well, right? If you are engaged with the ideas, that means you are there for longer. It means you're stewing in your mind for longer. But it's a very different type of writing than, say, a science paper, which is purely there to convince you of certain facts. Yeah. So edutainment is going to be mostly about establishing pathos, or an appeal to emotion, so that you can keep an audience engaged. So if you are making YouTube content, your authority isn't as important, right? Because you can demonstrate your authority with good logos, right? They're not strictly separate from each other. Again, I love The Poopy Show. It's one of my favorite channels on YouTube. And she does a really good job at covering all manner of different topics. And there's no way that she has a PhD in every topic she covers. But you trust her because it feels like the research that she has done is pretty complete. So you can make up for a lack of ethos by good logos, right? Making sure your work is well researched. I get this comment occasionally where people don't feel confident about making sci-comm content because they don't have the background. Like, I don't have a degree in XYZ, ergo I can't make content on XYZ. And I would just like to say that's not true. You can make content, you just have to be way more careful. You have to be very, very careful and be very well cited. So authority through proven competence. Exactly, right? You can prove that you are mindful, that you are dedicated, that you are careful, without having a degree. After all, like I say all the time, dude, I'm a neurobiologist. There's like one or two things that I've done on this channel that have anything to do with neurons. Outside of that, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, right? I am using the skills I got in graduate school to do research, but I'm not an expert in anything that I talk about. I am just trying really, really hard and being very, very careful. Okay. So how do you establish good logos? Can't help you here. This is your professional background coming into play. You should know your subject really, really well and write very clearly, which I'll talk about in the clarity section. Establishing ethos. If you have higher education, you can just flex that. This can be done in good taste. This can be done in poor taste. In my videos, I think I've only flexed my education in one video because it was relevant for the story. But if, yeah, the most important thing here is that if you don't have authority, then don't lie, obviously. Just don't lie. And be very careful of how strongly you can draw conclusions. Like, if you analyze my own writing, I hedge a lot. A group of researchers have said this. I'm not claiming that this is true. I'm claiming somebody has said this all the time, right? That's just how you do it in science. So if you are a non-expert, what I would recommend is that you always cite your sources. That way, if somebody goes, hey, this isn't actually the majority opinion in our field, you can go, my bad. I just cited, a commonly cited paper with a lot of citations. That's me trying my best. And then you can apologize, right? Admit when you make mistakes. That's really important for your ethos as well. If you want to be someone who is well respected, right? You could go for the slop route and not care. But if you're watching me, I assume you do care. When in doubt, hedge it out. Exactly. Like, I'm a professional hedger. I hedge all the time. Okay. Yeah. So how do you establish pathos? This is the fun one, right? This is what this presentation is about. I'm doing sci-comm. My interpretation of sci-comm is that it is for a popular audience. It is for a non-expert audience. And in my opinion, the most important thing is to draw them in with an emotional appeal. And this accomplishes a couple of different things. It provides them with a context and why they should care. And when you hook them with the why they should care, then it gets way easier to get them to continue watching to the very end, right? And so there are many different types of approaches you can take to Pathos, right? Your thing is sad, tragic stuff, gets clicks. I don't tend to like to do that very often. Your thing is scary, rabies, prions, people will click on stuff that scares them. Your thing is hopeful. I tried to do a lot of hope core. I like the hope angle. Or your thing is wonderful / interesting. If your thing doesn't appeal to any of the other things, at the very least, it should be wonderful / interesting. And I try to do a lot of that in my work as well. So what is interesting? So you can appeal to wonder, right? There's huge ideas out there that are worth thinking about, and so those have a wondrous appeal to simplifying complexity. If you say up front, inside an LLM, right, something very complicated to understand, I'm going to break it down for you, right? That's an appeal. Appeal to complexifying simplicity, something that people take for granted all the time. I don't know, like the secret chemistry behind water or something, right? Like something that you assumed was very boring, and then I'm going to make it interesting for you. Appeal to niche interests, right? If you have a very niche interest, like the meme one at this point is like trains. There are a lot of people who love trains, so you can probably just talk about trains, and people who love trains will watch your train video, right? Appeal to the unexpected, right? So subversion of expectations is interesting and novel for people, so you can use that as an angle. And that relates again to that next point, which is subversion of expectations, right? So there's a hook where something seems very obvious, but you are promising that it's not obvious down the line. Yeah. So, somebody that I look forward to, look up to a lot in this space is Vsauce. And, I actually wrote a whole thesis essay on this video, specifically this title, How Much Does a Shadow Weigh, as an example of subverting your expectations. Because, how much does a shadow weigh? Does a shadow have a weight? It's a question that befuddles you because it subverts your expectations for what is even a possible question to ask, right? There's a hook there, and it's got 12 million views, right? There's something interesting about that idea. How to count past infinity, right? Like breaking your expectations. We are kind of taught that you cannot go more than infinity, but this video is promising that you can. And a bunch of other things. Like I think Vsauce is an excellent case study in appealing to this kind of quirk, right? This, it's addictive in a kind of way. I love complexifying simplicity because so much of my field looks so simple, but it's a product of complex processes and thousands of hours of work. And as a sci-comm person, you should definitely sell that to them, like really play it up, right? Like, oh, I don't like, we'll okay. So Tretron actually did submit a sample. We'll get to it later, but I really did enjoy reading your excerpt. And I think complexifying simplicity is a great angle to go by, but you got to play it up to sell it to an audience. Okay, so that was sort of the fluffy, abstract stuff that, you can make arguments because it's poorly defined. But now we're going to talk about clarity and the mechanics of writing, the actual word and sentence choice. So here's a sample abstract from a real science paper, and I want to show you in professional technical writing how extreme these decisions can get, right? So I'm just going to read this out loud. It's just from a random paper I pulled that was open access called Microglia Sends Fungal Infections Through Capsular Components from Capillary-Bound Cryptococcus Neoformans via Endothelial Nucleotide Signaling. Okay, so that's a bunch of words that you might not understand, but I will show you the mechanisms of how clarity works and functions in a scientific abstract. So I'll just read this out loud, and then we'll go sentence by sentence, right? Macrophages are essential for host defense, yet somehow parenchyma residing macrophages detect pathogens without direct contact remains unclear. Cryptococcus neoformans is an encapsulated fungal pathogen that infects the brain. Using in situ imaging of mouse models of, okay, there's some grammar issues here. We showed that brain-resident microglia vigilantly detect capillary residing C neoformans prior to its blood-brain blood-brain barrier transmigration, but are less responsive to non-encapsulated fungi or parenchyma-injected C. neoformans. Microglia migrate to and enwrap leaky capillaries harboring fungi, leading to fungal uptake but not clearance, instead promoting fungal growth. Microglial response is triggered by release capsule components rather than the assembled capsule. In particular, the glucurooxymyelomannan plays a critical role by activating endothelial cells to release nucleotides which act on microglia P2Y12. Our findings revealed a novel paradigm by which microglia detect pathogens without direct contact, offering new insights for microglial directed antifungal therapies. Okay, so if you don't speak biology, that might have been completely non-comprehensible to you, but I assure to you there is logic and clarity here for biology, right? So the first thing you want to do that anybody can understand is this abstract is hooking in the reader with a knowledge gap, right? This is their pitch, right? In terms of making the appeal, they're making this very simple for the reader. We don't know how these macrophages detect pathogens without contact, right? So there's this mystery. Macrophages are out there and they are detecting pathogens, but they can't feel them, right? And we don't know how macrophages are doing that. They're just magically drawn to these fungi, but how? We don't know. Okay, so that's the knowledge gap. They provide just enough context for appreciation of the following sentences. So, Cryptococcus neoformans is an encapsulated fungal pathogen that infects the brain. So they're defining exactly what the reader needs. And then this stuff is a preview of the findings, right? This stuff is not comprehensible if you don't have biology background. We'll just ignore it. But they are telling you, here, this is what we found. And then here's why you should be excited. Our findings revealed a novel paradigm, a new way by which these cells, microglia, can detect pathogens without ever touching them, offering new insights for microglial antifungal therapies. We can tell that there is a motivation. There is a motivation behind every single sentence, right? Every single sentence has a function, and that is why you need to think about clarity. Because if you are just writing without paying attention to clarity, then your writing will come out being hard to decipher. So even though this abstract is not going to be comprehensible if you don't have biology background, the construction of this abstract is motivated, right? Hook the reader in by telling them what we do not know. Here, I'm defining the keyword that you need here. This is what we found, and this is why you should care. Those same strategies are going to be fundamental in establishing clarity and narrative for the rest of this presentation. So when you write, every sentence needs to carry some amount of weight. Every sentence needs to be motivated, and that is why we're going to be talking about sentence-to-sentence structure. So the thing to appreciate with technical writing, again, we're not going to be doing technical writing here, but I want you to come away with this, is that there are no wasted words. There are no wasted words in technical writing. And you can waste words in sci-comm, but you should do so artistically, right? In technical writing, clarity, concision, and argumentation is prized above all else. But in sci-comm, you're not doing as much arguing, so that aspect of the writing will be omitted here, right? The thing I want you to take away from this particular example is that the ceiling for clarity is very, very high, and concision is very, very high, okay? So how do we apply the principle of clarity to popular sci-comm content? Artistic ways. Yeah, I think so. I'll tell you the different ways in my own style that I produce artistic waste to buy you time to stew with some ideas, right? Because if I were to write with no wasted words, it would be really dense. You know, I would throw a million ideas at you in 8 words, and then you would have a lot of trouble retaining any of that information. So there's an element of artistic waste that allows your mind to catch up with the ideas that I am throwing at you, essentially. That's where we differ, partner. All my words are wasteful. I argue that they're not. And when we go through the style part, I will argue that your wasteful words are not wasteful. They are a pacing tool to ensure that the audience can understand what you are writing. Okay. So how do you achieve clarity in writing? Use topic sentences, think about sentence length, and introduce context as necessary. Okay, topic sentences. People like visual aspects. Yeah, I mean, this PowerPoint is all about writing, and it's 100 slides long, so I didn't put any pictures in here. It's mostly just me talking at you. But the benefit of YouTube is that you don't have to communicate all of your ideas in the script. You have visuals, and I'll get into the style aspect, how Clockwork and I approach visuals differently. Okay, so what is a topic sentence? So a topic sentence provides context for the rest of the paragraph. You get this in most writing classes, but it is so important for technical writing and sci-comm. I think in humanities classes that I've taken, topic sentences were mentioned, but were never treated all that seriously in my classes that I took. But in my technical writing classes, oh, you would get burned if you did not have a topic sentence at the beginning of every paragraph. So these are following examples from Wikipedia of topic sentences. While the ant generally works for the benefit of the community, she also carries out duties for her own needs. But will the current budget cuts be enough to balance the school district's budget? And this is a long one, but I do like this one for a different reason. Kubler and Kessler have identified 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And they have provided a detailed explanation of the symptoms and behaviors of each of these stages so that those experiencing grief may identify which stage they are in at any given time and develop strategies with the help of their therapists to move through those stages more effectively. And then this is the topic sentence, which is so deep into this paragraph, which I don't love. Since their original work, however, a number of other psychologists have developed different models of the grieving process that call into question some of Kubler and Kessler's contentions, right? So the important thing about a topic sentence is that even though I just gave you these examples, you can kind of imagine what the rest of this paragraph is going to be. And here's where I'm going to appropriate cog-sci, cognitive science a little bit. This isn't hard research. This is just the way I think of sentence construction. Is you have a sentence and your audience is then going to make a prediction, right? They are going to anticipate the following sentence. We can't help but do this, right? We are predictive machines even before LLMs were a thing. We're always trying to think one step ahead. That just helps us process information. So they read your first sentence, they're going to make a prediction as to what the next sentence is going to be. And if they get their expected outcome, there's a little bit of a reward. There's a little bit less friction that comes in, right? But if your following sentence is completely unexpected, there's going to be a little bit of a punishment, right? It is going to be a little harder to understand that second sentence because it doesn't flow quite as well, and so on and so forth. So every single sentence, when people say the writing needs to flow, this is kind of the cognitive aspect that they're referring to, that every single sentence is then followed by a prediction that the reader is making about the general form of the following sentence. So, but will the current budget cuts be enough to balance the school's district budget? Your brain is expecting something else about the school budget, right? Whereas if the next sentence is about the weather, there's going to be cognitive friction, right? It is not going to be a smooth transition. Your reader is going to feel annoyed. Their mental facilities are going to be taxed just that bit more. Okay, so every time an audience encounters information they were not expecting, a cognitive penalty is paid. So when we talk about mechanics, make sure that the next sentence is predictable, right? That you are not pulling surprises on your reader, unless that is specifically your artistic intent, right? You can use this subversion to artistic effect, but you have to be very careful with it, and there has to be a reason why you're doing it, right? You don't just throw curveballs for no reason. So if you like the work that I do, know that I do think about whether every sentence naturally flows the previous sentence from the perspective of a naive audience member, right? In my drafting and rewriting process, I will often go back and think to myself, like, as I'm reading back my script, I am asking myself, does this sentence naturally follow the previous one? Or does it produce a bit of surprise? And if it does present a bit of surprise, is that good surprise or is it bad surprise? Skipping an official uni science writing lecture to watch a phi science writing lecture. I don't love that, because I'm specifically talking about popular sci-comm in this, although you can apply these lessons to other aspects of writing as well. Okay. So again, I am a neurobiologist, so I think of things in terms of like cognitive penalty in a way, right? So when you set out a topic sentence, there's a bounding box for each individual audience member of expected ideas that will follow this topic sentence. So you want to make sure that your following sentences remain around this topic sentence. Otherwise, you're going to run into penalties. So this is high level, right? This is abstract, but we're going to see kind of how this flows. So I'm going to show you these topic sentences, and then you're going to tell me whether or not these are effective topic sentences, whether or not this bounding box is sufficiently small for you to make good predictions as to what's coming next, right? So I'll read these out loud, and then I'll take a sip of my tea. So the first topic sentence is DNA replication is an important process in the cell. So that's one topic sentence. Here's another one. DNA replication occurs during cell division. And then defects in DNA replication have been linked to prostate cancer. I'm gonna take a sip of my tea, and then if I could get some audience participation, which of these topic sentences do you like? Which of these topic sentences do you not like? Without even seeing the rest of this paragraph. What do y'all think? What do y'all think? Are there some of these topic sentences that you would rank more highly than others? Or are these all kind of about the same for you? What do y'all think? What is your reaction? Register your emotional reaction here. Only the second one is liked. I don't dislike any of them. Okay. The first one is a bit vague. Yeah, any other ideas? I don't like 1. It feels like it's telling me something I already feel like I should know. 3 intrigues me the most. Okay, yeah. So you can see that even though these 3 are topic sentences, some topic sentences are a bit more useful than others, right? Maybe 1, I get a little annoyed when the text gives something an unnecessary adjective. That's also something to pay attention to, right? This is the idea of, like, wasted words, right? Does it feel like the first topic sentence is conveying anything useful for you? It depends on how deep the text goes. About who is the audience, the first one is more shallow, and the last already more complex. That is also true. First is kind of bad because it doesn't actually connect topics. Yeah. 3 is the most interesting. I would say so. It is also a case by case from person to person. I also agree, but we're talking about consumption for your material en masse, right? How to make it as broadly appealing as possible. For a popular audience, at least. So I would agree with a lot of your interpretations, right? So I would say that this first one is maybe not the best topic sentence, precisely because I can't predict what the next sentence is, right? And some of you may disagree. I already see a difference in opinion and in the chat, right? But to me, this doesn't read as very good. And you can disagree with me. That's totally fine. But I'm giving you my perspective and how I write. I don't like this first topic sentence because I can't tell what the next sentence is. The next sentence could pivot into any number of different fields, and I'm going to be punished in some way because I cannot make that prediction. The second one I think is better. It is effective if the rest of the paragraph has to do with the timing of DNA replication, right? So if DNA replication occurs during cell division, the next sentence I am predicting is going to do something with cell division timing, right? What stage of cell division or what else is happening in the cell, but it should follow from this sentence that we are going to learn more about the timing or more about cell division. 3 is a very specific topic sentence. I think this is the best one in terms of having the best box, right? It limits the number of predictions that the audience can make. This is very clear that we are going to be talking about prostate cancer in some way. And if your next sentence does not relate to prostate cancer, then you should rethink about your organization, right? Yeah, I see. So you need a bit of psychological correction, right? Exactly. The first one is like getting dumped into the middle of the ocean with a boat and no map, right? You can think that it's like, again, because this is art. And you can anybody is allowed to have any interpretation on art. If you like it, you like it. I can't stop you from liking it. I'm saying I don't like it because it feels like I've been dumped in the middle of the ocean and I don't know where to go. And so whatever this next sentence is going to be, it's going to be surprising, which is going to make my brain a little more tired, right? And if you want your sci-comm to flow, you want every sentence to be easy and predictable for that audience member. Not like predictable as in, oh, I know exactly every word you're going to say, but you need to be at least steered in the correct direction. Otherwise, people are going to be very confused. Is the broader point here to talk about ways to limit the amount of unexpected information as much as possible to the message you're wanting to send? Exactly. That is how I think about building clarity, right? That is how I personally think about building clarity, is minimizing the cognitive penalty sentence to sentence, right? Limiting the possibilities by kind of railroading your audience to a certain conclusion. And, you know, while railroading is like not great in a game of Dungeons and Dragons, when you are trying to communicate very complex information, preventing your audience from drifting any number of different ways is going to help, because your audience feels more grounded. There's less anxiety. Like, oh, where is this video going? I don't know, right? And if they can't predict the next sentence, they don't get the reward, right? There's a little bit of neuroscience in this, right? For every correct prediction you make, you get a hit of reward, a little bit of a hit in your correct prediction, and you want to keep those rewards coming, right? That's how you get people to stick to your work. Okay, so I don't like topic sentence 1 because the bounding box of that topic sentence is enormous, right? The next sentence could have anything to do with DNA replication. It might have to do with a cell, right? Maybe the rest of this paragraph is listing every important process in the cell. DNA replication is an important process in the cell. Cellular respiration is also an important process in the cell. That's another valid sentence that can come afterwards, but that's a different following sentence than something else about DNA replication. It's a little too broad, I think. I thought it would be a mixture of limiting possibilities and encouraging creative thought. That might just be a me thing, though. I think that you can purposefully set up creative thought, but I would say that that's better suited at the end of a paragraph, right? At the end of your thought, you can leave room for people to imagine something else, right? So if you want to encourage creative thought, then you can end your paragraph with a question, which is an excellent thing to do. But I wouldn't begin with unlimited possibilities, right? And questions at the start of paragraphs, I think, are great, but they have to be done in a way where you are not punishing your audience for wandering off in a way that you are not going. Yeah. Okay, so how would I improve these? So here's the original topic sentence. DNA replication is an important process in the cell. So there are 3 different fixes that I have made depending on what the rest of this paragraph is. So if this sentence is about the role of DNA replication, then there's one possible option. If this is about how DNA replication happens, I have a different sentence. And if this is about when DNA replication happens, there's another sentence, right? So I'm changing this to something else, right? So here's my change, right? If I want to talk about the role of DNA replication, here's how I would change this topic sentence. DNA replication ensures that all the cell's genetic information is faithfully copied into the cell's offspring. Without this process, right, this is a very natural transition because this sets up the logical conclusion that the first sentence sets up. So there's very minimal cognitive punishment. This is a natural argument to be making after that first sentence. It might not be exactly where the audience thinks that they're going, but they can understand why you chose this path, right? You limited the box that people can wander down. You've limited the number of paths. If I want to talk about how DNA replication happens, I would rewrite this sentence to: DNA replication is mediated by many different enzymes. The most important enzyme, blah, 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 right? I've set up the fact that we are going to be talking about how DNA replication happens, and then I am going to narrow down on the most important enzyme. That's also a natural way to transition out of this topic sentence. And again, it flows, right? You can understand that there's a structure here. What about when? DNA replication is a highly regulated process that occurs during cell division. Specifically, right, you can tell that there's kind of a funnel in these two, that I am starting with a broad idea and then I'm getting more specific, right? I am leading people to a conclusion that I want them to reach. But I'm going to dwell on this slide and I'll get some of your feedback here to kind of get a sense for how good of a job that I'm doing, right? Does this make sense to you? That like in the lectures that I've like been in, people always talked about, okay, you should have a topic sentence, but they never really talked about what made for a good topic sentence. And my attempt here is to illustrate the ways in which you can refine a topic sentence to bang out more information and to reduce cognitive penalty on your audience, right? And if you go through my scripts, I do try to lead you a certain way, right? And I'm not going to say I do a perfect job. You know, I don't, you know, the timetable of making YouTube content, if you want to make money off of it, you gotta be writing all the time, right? You know, so I'm not going to say that I do a perfect job, but this is like the beating heart of how I think about structuring paragraphs. Is the first sentence should introduce the rest of the paragraph, yes, but it should also reduce the degrees of freedom by which an audience member can wander. Indeed, this makes more sense with what you said earlier regarding limiting other possibilities that could confuse a reader because of false predictions. Yeah, that's kind of the goal here, right? And you can experiment with this concept. You don't have to follow this exactly, but if you want to write like me, you should do this. That's what I was saying about style, right? If you want to follow my style, then you should do this. Be very mindful of how powerful your topic sentence can be. Okay. So just because an idea is very basic does not mean, in my opinion, that you get to crap out on a bad topic sentence, right? You can have very basic ideas, very intro level stuff, but you can still have a powerful topic sentence. It's leaving breadcrumbs to the next sentence. Exactly. And so you want to make sure that those breadcrumbs are tasty, right? That they're appealing. You don't want to make, you don't want those breadcrumbs to be old and stale and moldy. You know, you want to make sure that your reader wants to go where you want them to go. Okay. So topic sentences are useful beyond science communication, right? Any type of writing you do that is argumentative, that is trying to make an argument or present a case, will use topic sentences. So here are 3 I came up with randomly. So iCarly has been prophetic in predicting the impact of digital media on younger generations. You can tell that the next sentence is probably something to do with iCarly's, you know, what that impact is, right? K-pop Demon Hunter's use of K-pop lyricism creates a unique effect not seen in Disney musicals. So you've already set up the fact that the rest of this piece is going to contrast K-pop Demon Hunter's music and Disney music. And then the argument that art can be enjoyed without considering its context and creatorship is an arrangement based off of convenience, right? This is a thesis statement. You are previewing the rest of this piece so that your audience knows where you are going and wants to go with you. Okay. So every paragraph you write should have a topic sentence. It takes practice to not have these topic sentences sound overly mechanical, but it will improve your clarity in writing by like 1,000%, right? Dropping even one topic sentence can create confusion and a lack of stability within a paragraph and is a potential exit point for your audience. Remember, as science communicators, our primary objectives is to get the person to read and finish your piece or listen to the end or watch to the end. In this presentation, is this presentation going to talk about topic sentences should be modified depending on the target audience, or do the things you're talking about apply broadly to a range of levels? Absolutely. It applies to any argumentation piece, right? Every time you are making an argument, you want that argument to be clear. And the way you achieve clarity is to minimize cognitive penalty. The way you minimize cognitive penalty is to limit the degrees of freedom by which your audience can walk down. Unless, okay, here's a big unless, you are a weirdo, like a philosopher. If your name is Nietzsche, and instead of a very clear A to B to C logical line, you write thus spoke Zarathustra, which is like this anecdote that's making all sorts of philosophical arguments. Okay, you're a philosophy weirdo. You can do whatever you want with your writing. This is not for you. But if you want to write a concise piece of science communication, these are good practices, or any amount of argumentation, right? But again, if you're a weirdo philosopher, you know, fine. You don't have to do the way I do it, okay? Yeah. As a person only seeing your science videos, this feels like a fever dream. Might also be because you are working hard enough in my body. Thank you for the recognition, right? I love making those videos. I put a lot of thought and practice into it. I've also had a lot of content creation experience before Five and Neutrophil. All these projects that are dead in the water that I have failed to publish because I didn't like them enough. If you have membership, you can actually see my early stuff, the stuff that no one gets to see for free, because I don't like them. But I didn't get to my current point quickly. I've had decades of projects that I've hated. So if you want a confidence boost, if you're here, then you're probably going to grow faster than I did in terms of your skill level. Okay. Yeah. The last one interests me because of external information. The one about convenience of enjoying art regardless of context. Yeah, and that's going to be a members only video at some point because I find that to be a pretty interesting topic. Funnily, I'm literally in the middle of my thesis. I'm writing in English as a non-native, and this will actually be very helpful. That's awesome. Good luck to you. Props to any non-English speaker who has to write in English because English is like the science language. English is a terrible language, and I'm sorry you have to do it in English, but I hope that this can help in some ways. Yeah. I read a decent chunk of philosophy. I find the meandering very annoying with some writers. Yeah, it's not for everybody, right? But, philosophers are weird, like very weird people, so... Decades? How old is Phi? I only last about a day. My lineage, right? My stem cell lineage. Decades. English is 3 languages wearing a trench coat, and I hate it. I apologize on behalf of English. Okay. But yeah, use freaking topic sentences. I don't care, about artistic integrity in this particular point. If you are new to sci-comm, force yourself to write a topic sentence for every paragraph. And then after writing topic sentences become automatic for you, then you can artistically decide to engage with some strategic confusion if you would like, right? But before you get unless a topic sentence is automatic and natural for you, force yourself to write them until they become automatic for you. Okay. So how do you achieve clarity in writing? Use topic sentences. We already saw mechanically how you can improve your topic sentences and the function of topic sentences. Yeah. Hey, Nep, welcome. So Nep is another member of V-Theorem, a group of science education VTubers. Let's do that as a shout out. Hopefully Stream Elements bot will do that. Yep, there we go. Though Mandarin is also rather bad, not because of inconsistency like with English, more so specificity and contextual and tonal changes in meaning. Mandarin, there's a lot to like in Mandarin, I think. Except for writing. Writing Mandarin a little tough. All right. So topic sentences are really important, but you should also think about sentence length. And here's where I'm going to appropriate more cognitive science, right? So memory is a relay, right? Again, I'm a neurobiologist, so I'm appropriating cognitive science, but here's how I think about sentence length, right? Your memory works in several stages. You start with attention, right? Just your senses. Then your senses put in information into your working memory. Your working memory is this temporary, it's like RAM, right? Random access memory. It's your temporary storage, and then it gets encoded into short-term memory and then stored in long-term memory. And the thing is that when you are making a piece of communication, you are going to be negotiating with people's working memory. If you make your sentences too long, they might forget the beginning of the sentence by the time they get to the end, right? But at the same time, if you make them too short, then the unit of information density might be so high that it comes across as too professional, right? So I don't think this is strictly a how many words kind of thing. I think it's a combination of making sure that the information complexity is appropriately dense, right? If you're communicating very high level information and you use the fewest number of words possible, that works perfectly for a science paper because your audience are technical people. But if you're writing for YouTube, if you're writing for popular content, you need to make sure that you use the right number of words for how complex your ideas are, if that makes sense. Speaking of scientific writing, I've been reviewing a book called Am I Making Myself Clear? It's all about sci-comm for the general public. That's awesome. I also, I didn't read that particular book, but there's a famous science writer whose works are taught in every science writing class that's similarly supposed to that I draw a lot of my inspiration from as well. Those books are quite goated. Yeah. What would happen if you flew past the strongest magnetic field as in space as an example? As an example of what? Yeah. But yeah, so I don't really have an example for this in particular, but just know that the more complex your idea is, the more words you need for sci-comm. If you're doing professional writing, you're always using the fewest words possible, but for sci-comm, the harder your idea is, the more words you need. Okay, this is the big one. Okay, in terms of mechanics, this is maybe my favorite piece of advice for anybody thinking about doing sci-comm. Introduce context as necessary. Okay, a big mistake that science communicators write early on when they are just starting to learn is dumping all of the background information because they think, okay, in order for my audience member to understand this subject, they need to have the background information. That's true, but the mistake comes from the fact that if you introduce all of the background at the same time, it's kind of like this, right? Say I want you to build a piece of furniture, like a dresser, and I give you every tool and every nail, and I go, build me a dresser. You're not going to be able to know how to do it, right, without an instruction manual. Instead, what is better for YouTube, what is better for sci-comm, is introduce context as necessary. Here's a hammer. Here's how to use the hammer. Use the hammer. Here's the screwdriver. Here's how to use the screwdriver. Use the screwdriver. Don't dump all of your background at the start. Intersperse it just when your audience needs it. Okay, I love this meme. My autism. What do you mean you shouldn't just info dump? Control the info dump. You can info dump. You just need to do it strategically, right? Break it up. Make it an experience, right? So yeah, I love the stupid I require context meme. But yeah, your reader, your audience member, they do require context, but they don't want it fire hosed into them, right? They want a trickle right when they need it, right? Quick time event. What are the thing about wizards? The thing about a wizard is that they always show up precisely when they're, whatever that quote is. Okay. So do not feel compelled to give your audience all the background all at once, okay? So instead, instead of doing this, which is you give the background and then you go into the rest of the script, you should structure your writing like this. Your claim 1, just enough background to understand claim 1, then claim 2, then background 2, claim 3, then background 3, right? Remember, the principle of this is working memory is precious, right? You only have a certain number of words that you can fit in that working memory before it gets encoded into short-term memory. And if you stuff that working memory full of crap, then clarity is going to be lost, right? So introduce the tools exactly when your audience needs them. So proper introduction for context is super important, especially for very, very complex topics, right? So 2 different approaches, right? I just mentioned this. Here's a hammer, 3 different screwdrivers, and some power tools. Go build me a dresser. This is hard, right? This is hard. This is not an easy thing to do. I wouldn't know how to do this. Instead, your audience will appreciate, here's a hammer, go hammer in that nail. Here's a screwdriver, go screw in that bolt. And there you have it. You have built the dresser, right? This is a more natural, easy flow, right? We're all about easy here. Now, again, teaching and science communication are different. A teacher doesn't have to care as much about it being easy. A teacher actually needs it to be a little hard so that you actually learn, right? That is why I'm saying do not confuse science communication with teaching. If I were to teach you, it needs to be hard because that's the only way your brain will pay attention to the degree it needs to pay attention to be able to encode it into long-term memory. Again, repeating the idea that teaching has different goals in science communication. Okay. So here is an example. Here I have 2 paragraphs that are in the same piece of writing that I just made up here. DNA repair involves the coordination of many different enzymes. DNA glycosylase removes the damaged base, AP endonuclease cuts the DNA backbone, which is then filled in by DNA polymerase. Finally, DNA ligase repairs the backbone, ending the repair process. DNA can be damaged in a multitude of different ways. A common way for DNA to be damaged is through the generation of reactive oxidative species, oxygen-containing molecules that can damage. Wait, hold on. Okay, I think I'm moving to. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Okay, so sorry. Let me do that one more time. Most background is scaffolding to make sure that claims are properly encoded into longer term memory. I would say that sci-comm would like for stuff to end up in long term memory, but is not required. Teaching requires it to be put in long term memory. And as Seed says, long term memory requires questions for the audience. Yeah, exactly. Your audience has to work. Okay. If you want them to remember things, they have to work for it. The sample is dense and concise from my POV. I can fully understand it, but only because I know each piece of it. Yeah, exactly. This first sample, I don't actually enjoy that much, but I'll reread it because I forgot why I have this here. So, like, pay attention to, like, how the information flows and the cognitive penalties that you're running into, right? Part of being, like, good at writing is also, like, good at reading. So read these and, like, feel the pinch points, right? DNA repair involves the coordination of many different enzymes. DNA glycosylase removes the damaged base. AP endonuclease cuts the DNA backbone, which is then filled in by DNA polymerase. Finally, DNA ligase repairs the backbone, ending the repair process. DNA can be damaged in a multitude of different ways. A common way for DNA to be damaged is through the generation of reactive oxidative species, oxygen-containing molecules that can damage DNA bases. Reactive oxygen species are generated as a byproduct of cellular respiration. I think sentence to sentence, this makes sense. But, like, read this and just kind of take in what you're feeling, you know, what your experience of reading this sample is. Yeah. Then what about viewer interaction? On YouTube, you get a very limited ability to interact with the viewer directly, right? On a stream, it's great. That's why streams, I'll happily say that I'm, like, doing a teaching thing, right? Because you can talk to me. You can ask me questions. I can check for your understanding. I can correct you. I'm teaching now. In video format, I can't teach because I can't figure out if you've understood things correctly or not. Yeah. That comes down to three concepts of learning: seeing, hearing, and doing for learning, but that's not specifically required for sci-comm. You can't get your audience to do anything, right? It's completely optional for them. I mean, if you're doing a tutorial video, then yeah, the audience has an incentive to rewatch your video and to practice what you preach. But if you're doing sci-comm as, like, a popular thing for people to consume as entertainment, then there's very limited ability to, like, get them to do anything. There are some, right? Like, if you're talking about the eyes, then you can be like, move your, you know, cover your right eye and move your face towards the screen until this dot disappears. There, you've identified your blind spot, right? You can ask your audience to do certain things, but by and large, you don't want to do that all that often because it kind of breaks the flow, in my opinion. You can do it strategically. As many things in art, you can do a lot of things strategically. This example doesn't feel like it's building towards anything in particular. Exactly, I would agree. It feels a little disjointed. It's like all topic sentences, there's no claims. Yeah. This is informative, right? If you need to go back and remember how DNA repairs works, this is a completely fine thing to do. But you came in with that motivation. As a piece of content, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Dora the Explorer strategy. Yeah, exactly. You can strategically implement the Dora the Explorer strategy. Yeah. Okay, so sample 2, I've changed it a little bit, right? I reordered these, so now see how this flows. DNA can be damaged in a multitude of different ways. A common way for DNA to be damaged is through the generation of reactive oxidative species, oxygen-generating molecules that can damage DNA bases. Reactive oxygen species are generated as a byproduct of cellular respiration. How is DNA then repaired? DNA repair involves the coordination of many different enzymes. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? So take a moment to just kind of see how this sample is different than the last sample, even though the words are mostly the same. I did add a few words in here, but the content is basically the same. And just make observations on how differently this affects the viewer. In Dutch writing, I learned this as a glue sentence. That's an awesome way of saying it. Yeah, like a transition sentence, a glue sentence, right? Just a little slight change before sample one feels very disjoint. Just a little bit of rearrangement and one additional sentence, and then just feel how different that is. Yofi, when is the next video? A while. It's abiogenesis. The script is more than twice as long as any video I've ever done before. It'll be a while. I'm hoping before mid-March. Yeah. Yeah. Connectives. Yeah. Yeah. You can call it a connective. Yeah. So this is why I love to illustrate these concepts in tandem, right? How is DNA then repaired? That's your topic sentence. But then you also see that you only get the information as you need it, right? The first paragraph is about DNA damage. I'm introducing the topic, which is DNA damage, but I don't need to tell you everything about DNA damage. I'm going to introduce you the idea of repair right when I'm talking about repair. Save backups of that script. By the way, I've seen so many times my own scripts for writing get destroyed because of the device I'm using breaks. Yeah, yeah. That's a good idea. I haven't, but I'll make sure to do so. Good luck and don't overwork yourself. I love this stuff. I wouldn't trade this in. Like it seems like hubris to say this, right? But I can't wait to burn out. That's like messed up. I don't encourage that kind of idea, right? You should take care of yourself. But I love doing this so much that like I would like to see if it is even possible for me to burn out on YouTube. That might be naive. I might come to regret that. But my personality is one that like I burn out as a challenge for YouTube, right? When I was working my regular teaching job, I would not have said that. But YouTube for me is a true passion here. Not to say that if you burn out that it isn't your passion, right? I'm just saying that like when it comes to YouTube, I'm very puppy dog, naive. Like I just want to work as hard as I can, as often as I can. Not because I'm driven by fear, right? Because that's the important difference between burnout, in my opinion, as someone who is not burnt out yet, is that I don't feel I'm privileged to not like to have like money around for a while. So I'm not like super duper stressed about like, oh, how am I gonna like feed myself? You know, I've got money to keep trying YouTube for quite a bit of time. So as long as it's fun, then I won't burn out, I think. What do you do from when an audience/reader thinks well ahead of the pacing of the context provided and asks questions about a topic sentence way too early? You can't control with 100% certainty where an audience member goes. You can only provide them a path to return to, right? So if they are making a prediction and they're punished for it, the best you can do is make sure that they can hop back on the work as fast as possible, right? So again, it's like minimizing penalty. I shouldn't be so blasé about burnout. I know that cognitively, but my emotional truth is that like I'm still in a place where I love this so much that I can't imagine burning out. Which again, I'm like the thinking brain is like that's obviously impossible or very unlikely. But the heart wants what the heart wants, right? Like I really truly love doing this. Okay, so that concludes the mechanics section. So I will stop here and hydrate and read chat for a bit. If you have any questions about particular mechanics, like if you have sentence/word choice questions, I'll answer them now before we get into the kind of my favorite segment, which is how to build narrative. What was it that got you to being so in love with biology in general? I really love stories, and I think evolution is the greatest story ever told. Like all of biology, I forget what the quote exactly is, but it's a beautiful quote that all biologists are passingly familiar with. It's that nothing in biology makes sense in absence of evolution. And as a storyteller, as someone who loves stories, like, my dad used to read me like stories before bedtime, like big, grand, epic stories, like Journey to the West is the one that he loved to read to me when I was a kid. Weirdly enough, like war fiction I was really into as well as a kid, like the Three Kingdoms period of China. I loved that stuff, like strategy, battles, and that extended to a love of the germ war, right? The evolutionary arms race between the immune system and pathogens. Also something that I really enjoyed learning about because there is a gripping story. I'm also a dungeon master myself. I love telling stories, and I think biology is the best story. That might be naive, but the way I've seen it before was to always improve, like a roguelike that helps me when I feel burned out, especially getting a stranger's POV because the last questions. Yeah, we all have our own mechanisms of trying to avoid burnout. I just think as long as it's still fun, I'm okay. The second it stops feeling fun, I will know that burnout is approaching. Like, I think you don't have to worry too much about me because I like to believe that my emotional awareness is quite good, especially after therapy. I've been given a lot of tools to be very aware of how I'm feeling in any given moment. And the moment it stops being fun for me, it's gonna be like a huge wake up call. Yeah. For someone who has never created anything on YouTube, what do you think realistic responses to this knowledge are? Uh, I have a segment about this at the very end where I'm like, you can ignore everything I've said here, right? If you've never made content before, the most important thing is to just write, just make something. It's probably not going to be good. I'm going to be real, right? I'm not going to gas you up and be like, the first thing that you make is going to be awesome. It's probably not. But the thing is that it's reps, right? The more reps you get, the better you are at stuff, right? Again, for my members, you've seen 2 videos that I've made on a previous channel that I've since deleted that I am not happy with, that I think is like pretty terrible overall. I think the bones of the video are good, as in like I think I still do a good job communicating clearly in those videos, but they're like not funny, they're awkward, they're cringe. I haven't developed my voice fully from there. So, in terms of how this is received, if you've never made content before, you can ignore everything here for now. But once you start making content, like if you have this in the back of your mind, then you can go back in and inspect your own work, right? I'll just say this now. First, just write something. And then the tools that you get from this stream will help you look at your work sentence by sentence and tinker with it. That's all I ask, right? If you're going to be in this stream, is that you write something and then you are aware of how you can change things. Because here's the thing, I can't tell you how to write better because I'm not in your head. I don't know the stuff that you know. I don't have your unique voice. But what I can do is say, I am going to tell you the ways in which I think about writing so that you can think about writing in a different way. Maybe you don't like the way I think about writing, which is totally fine. That's actually useful. If you find yourself negatively reacting to the advice I'm giving here, that's also informative because it means that your voice is very different than my voice. And even if you reject my ideas, by rejecting my ideas, you are still evolving your own ideas because you've learned that you don't like my ideas, if that makes sense. How do you get people to connect common science knowledge with real life phenomena? You kind of have to spell those things out for them, I think. You can do so in an artful way where you are asking the audience to do more work because, okay, that's a really great question. You're asking people to make connections. You're asking people to synthesize, which is cognitively a very difficult thing to do. You can make it easier for them by giving them the scaffold of the connection and then hoping they make the thing happen in their head. And I'll actually talk about that idea when I talk about style. Another thing with burnout, from what I've experienced, at least for DMing, I'll DM a fantasy world I create and it'll be new each time. And when met with repetitive player actions, I don't know if it's similar because of similar actions, it feels repetitive. But if it's too different, it feels way out of left field and it's upsetting or confusing. I think we're prediction machines, and that makes sense to some degree too. Why do you think de novo gene birth is unlikely, even though all those original genes likely came from it? I mean, outside of the very beginning of life, it's just really hard to prove. It's not that it's unlikely, it's just that we don't know how likely it is or was. It's just hard to understand. How do you get people to go from certain chemical reactions release gas and heat to never mix cleaning products unless instructed otherwise? I mean, I think, yeah, you just gotta spell it out, right? Like if you're making content about that reaction, then you can title it something like dangerous chemical reactions. People will click on something like that. It's got that pathos appeal, right? It's very emotional, it's very dangerous. And there's this concept called like repetition legitimizes. You can end with the chlorine story, the bleach story about never mixing gases with other things, but do like 8 other examples building up to it. That repetition will legitimize that connection, right? Repetition legitimizes. Neuroscience question: how does ADHD or similar neural differences affect perspective for studying / lecturing or storytelling from a biological perspective? I could not tell you. I don't have. I'm. Oh my goodness! Huge super chat. Thank you so much, Deep Sheep 6. Huge. I gotta drop it. I can't wait to watch the VOD. Thanks for hosting the stream about the art of science comms, and I can't wait to see more of your work. Thank you so much, Deep Sheep 6. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Unexpected super chat. Goodness, I know, right? That's sick. Very grateful to be on the receiving end of that. Yeah, sorry. So I'm not neurodivergent, so I can't speak to that. I would like to believe that these practices are broadly applicable because of these, scaffolds that I've learned from cognitive science, or appropriating, I should, because I'm not a cognitive science person, but appropriating the language of cog sci. I feel relatively confident that this is a natural way through information, but I could be wrong, right? I don't have that experience. And most of my research into like autism, for example, are from the biological perspective and not from the neuroscience perspective. So, I can't in good nature make any recommendations based off of that. It's an interesting topic, though. I'd be very curious to hear from neurodivergent people whether or not they think that this workflow could work for them. One thing I've never understood: if I sprout a new gene, won't it get eliminated during sexual recombination because it won't have anything to pair with? I mean, you could get like duplications that might make that okay. Also segregation is a thing. If it happens on one chromosome, there's a chance that one of those eggs and one of those sperm gets that particular chromosome. Yeah. What was your favorite video to work on? I love any video I'm currently working on. Yeah. I wonder how much does the super chat take on YouTubers' side for the donation? I think we get around 70% of it. Similar question for things like Patreon. Patreon doesn't take as much of a cut. However, I prefer the convenience of just being able to donate to me on one single platform. I've been thinking about this for a while. I might make a change where I might move every membership above $5 to Patreon, so that I can keep more of the money. I've been meaning to do that for a while now, but like $5 and you get like my members only video, I think that's probably pretty solid. But any support at this point is appreciated. But yeah, I think I will in the near future move the higher level tiers to Patreon, because I don't offer all that much besides the members only videos. I personally do not think it would work as someone with ADHD myself, but it is useful to compare and contrast it because I don't think the same way as other people. That's fair. That's fair. Storytelling is much more effective because by definition, our working memory is deficient. So we work better when we have a logical sequence of events. So would you say that the practice that I've been preaching so far is like good? Because, okay, so here's the thing on storytelling. I haven't gotten to that aspect yet, right? The clarity segment was about the raw mechanics of sentence by sentence construction. We're about to get into storytelling in this next part. So maybe, Ryanite, maybe you'll find the stuff that I'm about to get into to be more effective for people with ADHD. And if you don't think so, that's also useful information to know too. Okay, let's get into it. Narrative. This is storytelling. This is my favorite part. So narrative is the story that your words tell. This is important for argumentation and engagement. Good narrative will keep the reader's attention in this tough attention economy, right? I mean, retention is the name of the game on YouTube. The key to good narrative is to be able to take the perspective of your reader / audience. And I will demonstrate several structures you can try for yourself, right? So in order to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader too, right? And you have to be willing to put yourself in your target audience's shoes, because they don't have all the information that you have. So I will demonstrate, again, this is about mechanics here. This is about mechanics here, about storytelling, several different structures in storytelling to build a story around. Okay. Okay, so here's like I had a similar graphic up earlier about cognitive penalty, but like here's why narrative is important, right? So you make a claim, and then your audience has a couple of different paths, right? If they follow your path, then you reduce audience friction. You know, that makes logical sense, as people in chat are saying they like that logical connection. If you don't follow their path, right? The audience defines their own path, right? You get to build the roads, but your audience is free to wander wherever they want, right? And they might not follow the road that you built. So there's a conflict in audience expectation if they don't follow your road, which can be strategic in a certain way, right? You can leverage this to create tension, which is important for narrative. But if they just wander off completely out of the woods, then that's potentially bad, because then they might end up confused. Okay. So here's one structure that I can recommend you try, right? This is the thing I'm calling wild claim into supporting evidence. So here's how you do this. You start off with a big if true claim, which introduces tension. Right? There are stakes here, right? There's something big here. There's a daring claim, and it'd be really cool if this was true. And then you build tension by providing supporting evidence, right? Supporting claim 1, evidence 1, claim 2, evidence 2. And then at the end of that story, you get a situation where this big if true claim, you've proven that to be true, that resolves the tension. Then the audience can take a breath, right? Okay, so this is cool in theory, but how do we practice this? Well, I've dug this up for my own videos because I use this structure all the time. Right? Here's a claim. Giant viruses blur the line between living and non-living. That's a big claim. The first supporting claim is that giant viruses have many features that life has. Claim 2, giant viruses have many features that more typical viruses do not have, so they're different than regular viruses. And supporting claim 3, giant viruses are more complex than the simplest bacteria, right? They're bigger, more DNA, etc., etc. Ergo, the line between living and non-living might just be encoded ribosomes, right? I know a lot of people are like, you can't call giant viruses living, they don't got ribosomes within their compartments, right? You need that for, I'm like, sure. If you want to believe that like life needs a self-sufficient metabolism encoded in a cell, that's fine. You can believe that. I'm cool with you. But for other people who might not like that aesthetic, this would blur that line, right? So I started with something crazy, that giant viruses are like this thing between life and non-life. And I set up a situation where I am going to spend the next minute or two proving to you that this is an idea worth considering, right? That is one particular narrative structure, right? Your regular viruses can eliminate the line between living and non if you catch one of them. That's true. That is true. I don't do what you do at all speedily. I assume everyone has my information in memory. Here's the thing, I also have a terrible memory. You can do a little test for your working memory. There's like I don't think it's like high fidelity, right? It's not a professional test, but you can go and just see. You get a little test that tests how many numbers you can memorize. And I'm on the border of like terrible. Like if you tell me your phone number, I'm going to be able to get either the first 5 digits or the last 5 digits, which means that I need my stories to be simple, that I need the information to be broken up in manageable chunks. Otherwise, it gets really, really hard to figure things out. So I'm also in a similar boat. I'm not going to claim to have it as bad, but I am on the low end of normal, I would say. But I think that is a superpower because, again, I've known some like brilliant people who don't have to work very hard to do a lot with their brain, and when they communicate, you can't understand them at all because they can't put themselves in your shoes. So, I often say this, but I don't think I'm smarter than anybody who watches me. I just had more school than a lot of people, but I don't think that makes me smarter. That just means I got more facts about biology and like rattling around in my head. And because I don't think I'm smarter than anybody, I think that gives me a pretty good baseline as to how to write accessibly for the high-level content that I want to make, right? Because my content isn't for everybody. It's for people who are interested in biology. And so I feel like I can toe that balance pretty well. Educated is not the same as smart. Yeah, exactly right. Okay. So this is the cleanest path to put your audience on, right? This introduces tension. There's a clear structure. There's not a lot of subversion here. So this is one strategy to try to organize your information into. Here is something a little trickier. This is what I'm calling the straw man subversion. So you straw man for a reasonable logical conclusion. So what does this mean? This means that I am putting an idea into your head. I'm putting an idea that seems reasonable to you in your head, and I am assuming that you are believing it. And I am going to make it look like I believe the idea too, up until a point where I pull the rug from out under you and I go, actually, this completely reasonable thing that you believe is wrong. And here you build tension because you are building up to something and the audience doesn't know quite what you're building to. But then when you say that the straw man that you built is wrong, then conflict explodes. Then you get a really exciting part of your piece, something that generates a lot of curiosity and wonder. So this is something that is a little hard to just understand from this general form. So here's an example of when I did this in a video. Okay. So in my Prion video, I said prions are basically invincible. I put this at the very beginning. You know, you can autoclave them. You can in certain experiments, you can expose them to very, very ridiculously high heat, and they will not degrade, right? You know, they are resistant to all sorts of proteases and chemical degradation. I build prions for that entire video as being these invincible, super deadly, horrible things, which most YouTube videos on prions will do, right? Most YouTube videos will want you to believe that prions are this omega scary thing. But then I pull out the rug from underneath you. I go, actually, lichens, you know, just these harmless communities of yeast and bacteria, you know, together, they actually make a protease that can degrade prions. And that contrast makes that point a lot more exciting, a lot more retentive, right? Now you're paying attention. I spent the first 20 minutes telling you about how prions are terrible and invincible. And then minute 21, I go, but I lied to you the entire time. Actually, there are biological organisms that can degrade prions. And I've often gotten comments that this was their, you know, the most exciting part of the video for them. The idea that there are biological degraders of prions out there. Yeah. Oh man, I hate this strat when they omit part 3. Yeah. You have to attack the straw man if you set up the straw man. Be a dishonest manipulator. Got it. Hey, this is you know, this is a peek behind the scenes, right? I hope you still watch me in the future, but I hope that when you learn these tactics, when you watch my future videos, you can go like, oh, Phi is doing the straw man subversion, and I hope that makes the video better for you. Or maybe it makes it worse when you understand, you know, when you see the kitchen, I guess you could say. Okay. So this is not applicable for a lot of claims, but when you can set up that straw man, the payoff is awesome, right? When you can build this idea that is very logical and makes a lot of sense, but is actually false, that's a great storytelling device. I love that one. Okay, strategic ambiguity. So we start off the same way with the straw man for a reasonable logical conclusion, right? It builds that tension. I'm putting the idea in your head, right? This is a reasonable idea. I'm hoping you accept it because it is so reasonable. I build up the straw man. I support it. And then I go, however, the reality is much more complicated. And then there's no neat and tidy resolution. And that is not good to do all the time. It's good to do strategically when you want your audience to feel a certain way. And sometimes what I want you to feel is anxiety, nervous, a little bit, right? Just a little bit, because science is mysterious. I don't like it when science media is too clean, because it betrays the reality of science, right? The reality of science is we don't know more than we know. Right, if that makes sense, right? We know a lot about the universe, but there is so much that we don't know. And I think a good sci-comm should occasionally remind people that despite how far we've come, there's still a lot that we don't know. Are we going over logical fallacies and writing in arguments? No, we're actually talking about how you can you can manipulate an audience into paying more attention by manipulating their understanding of the truth, right? And not in like a bad way, not in an evil way, but in an interesting storytelling way where you are building up a bad guy, right? Because it's the same if you're a fiction writer, this is the same principle, right? It's building up this bad guy, like a jobber, right? Like in anime, right? Like Vegeta is the jobber. Vegeta's role is to be beaten up so that Goku seems better, right? And this is that strategy. These two straw man strategies, right? We're throwing Vegeta out there. You know Vegeta's awesome, but you know Vegeta's gonna have his ass beat. And that is because you're gonna make Goku look better in comparison, right? Vegeta's just wingmanning for Goku a lot of the time. But that's also why we love Vegeta, right? Goku is less of an exciting character because Vegeta has some real angst over being the punching bag of the series. Vegeta provides the fiber to keep the plot regular. Exactly. Vegeta is very important to Dragon Ball. Very, very important. I actually did this once in a classroom. I had a poll about what was everyone's favorite fruit, and most answered strawberry, which is not a real fruit. Exactly. And they are going to retain that information much more because of that expectation was subverted. The subversion of that expectation is surprising, and our brains pay more attention when you encounter surprise, right? And this is a good kind of surprise, right? When we were talking about the clarity section, there are bad kinds of surprises where your brain is not correctly predicting the direction of the story. But here, you are kind of foreshadowing the straw man, right? You are foreshadowing that, like, oh, this idea is maybe a little too easy to accept, right? Fai's making it seem like this idea is a little too easy, but I'm going to see where he's going with this. And then you can hit them with this reality breaking thing that they are going to then retain because you've made it very engaging. I mean, I always like it when we get to see them fun and not neat and tidy things. It's more fun. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so how do I do this? I did this in my video about the gut and the immune system. All right, so our immune system does not attack good bacteria. Good bacteria often lack attackable targets. Flagella are some of the best targets for the immune system to attack. Plenty of commensals make flagella, and it's not really known completely how commensals with flagella escape the immune system, right? So let me break this down for you. In so many of my videos on bacteria, I say, okay, the immune system, neutrophils in particular, can detect the presence of flagella. Flagella are these little tails, I guess you could call them, on bacteria that rotate and propel the bacteria. It helps them move. And the thing is, most commensal I shouldn't say most, a lot of your commensal bacteria don't need flagella. They just kind of hang out in your gut. They stay in place. They don't really do much. They just go with the flow. They sit on top of your mucous membranes and eat the mucus for their sugar. A lot of bad bacteria need flagella because they need that flagella to propel them into your mucous membranes so they can hide from the hostility that is your gut. And the immune system counters that by detecting their flagella. They can bind that flagella. Sometimes bacteria will drop their flagella and the immune system can sniff that flagella like breadcrumbs. But here's the thing. A lot of good bacteria that are perfectly healthy for you, also make flagella. So why doesn't the immune system attack those commensals? So some strategic ambiguity here is acknowledging that, hey, you, biology major in the audience, you could potentially be in school for that, right? You could potentially be the PhD guy that figures that part out, and that's very exciting for students, right? The idea that biology isn't done, it's not complete, we didn't figure everything out yet, and pointing out those gaps by setting up this straw man can be even more exciting. Can't pathogens copy the good bacteria? They do all the time. Okay, so that's that strategy. Yeah, so this one's my favorite. Plenty of great questions remain unanswered and will also make your work stay with people for much longer, right? Sometimes a good question like this will bother an audience member long after your video ends, right? Why doesn't the immune system attack good bacteria that have flagella? The flagella is a bright red flag for the immune system to attack, and yet plenty of healthy E. coli just get to exist without being attacked at all. Question is why? What role does speculation play in ambiguity? Here, you are giving your audience permission to speculate, because speculation is one of these rare times in a video where you can directly interact with the audience. If I am doing this in a video, I am asking you to to go wild with your imagination. And that's fun for the audience, right? This is where you can take a break from the railroad. You know, I spent the last hour and a half teaching you how to make the railroad. This is a strategy to allow your reader, your audience member, to wander off that railroad. Rico's got the actual real answer because they stay on their side of the biome. That is true. You are ruining it, Rico. I wanted people to I wanted people to stay with that a little longer, right? Rico is right. A lot of the reason why those bacteria get to exist is because they're in the correct place. If you watched my video, that is also the answer that I give there. I couldn't come up with a good one here in time because I did this all like yesterday, but Rico is right. But, you know, before Rico spoiled the answer, you did have the opportunity to hypothesize, which is fun. It is fun, right? If you are on the wrong side of the bloodstream, you're going to get attacked. But if you stay where you're allowed to stay, the immune system won't bother you. Okay. This is another one that I love. This is a narrative format I call the challenge. So you start off with a really complex idea, and then you tell your viewer that you are going to respect their intelligence, right? So here's a hard idea. I'm telling you it's hard. I'm telling you it's really hard. I'm telling you that you need a big old brain to do this. But I'm also going to tell you that if you stick with me, you are going to understand that complex idea. So you are promising a reward. If you get to the end of this paragraph, you are going to know something that most people don't. That's a contract that I've made with the viewer. So I take that complex idea, I tell you that it's hard, and then I digest it for you, splitting it up into different concepts, and then giving you that reward and congratulating you for understanding it fully. I don't have a good example of that here, but I'm sure I think Clockwork actually does a good job of this in particular, right? Because Clockwork's entire channel is biochemistry. Hairy, mechanical, like very, very high level stuff that he does a really good job at breaking down into digestible pieces, right? He chews them for you so that you can put it back together in your own brain. And when you look at the beautiful visuals in those videos, you get a sense that you've done something good for yourself. Like you've eaten your Brussels sprouts, you've taken your fiber supplement, et cetera, right? And that's really engaging as well. That's a technique that I only pull out when I have no other option, right? I don't like to do this because not every idea needs this breakdown, but Clockwork, I think, does this very, very well. So I don't have a good example for myself because I think the hardest thing that I've done was maybe like gene duplication or something. You know, I don't typically tend to deal with a lot of deep diving into singular topics like Clockwork can. Yeah, I think the transcription video I did last year is just me begging the audience to stick around for the moment we put everything together in the end. Yeah, exactly, right? Clockwork does this a lot. And, you know, I really like this. I wish I could do more of this, but it is also really hard to do this because the ideas are so tough, right? Okay. So that's narrative. Okay, that's how to use narrative. And there are so many narrative structures, right? There are so many narrative structures. I just pulled out the ones that I found to be the ones that I use the most typically and the ones that I wanted to share, right? So go explore, right? What I want you to take away from the narrative section is narrative is a negotiation between attention, you know, the viewer's attention, and tension, right? The feeling of excitement that you want to build up and release, because that's what makes works engaging. It's not just about logic, right? It's not just about A to B to C to D, because that's not very exciting. It might be very clear, but you're asking for a viewer to pay attention. And in order for a viewer to pay attention, you need to give them little treats along the way, right? Like the challenge one, where I am promising you that you will feel smarter by the end of this. I am promising you a treat. Subversion, right? I am building this idea up for you. I'm building up Vegeta. Vegeta's so strong. Vegeta's so cool. And then the villain comes and beats Vegeta's ass, right? Like that's building up a villain and then building up a hero and then crushing him for dramatic purposes. And you can do that in your writing too. All right. So, any questions on narrative or anything else up until this point that I can talk about? I'm going to take a bit to rehydrate. Because the next section I think is going to be fun because I'm going to compare Clockwork's writing to my own writing to tell you about style. So far, I think what I've said is relatively non-controversial, right? I believe very strongly in the mechanics of writing, topic sentences, sentence length, the way you should deliver context for maximum clarity and engagement. I feel very strongly about the use of attention and tension in building narrative, right? I think if I were to make a bold claim myself, I think most writers can't really disagree with any of that, right? I think those are just the bones of writing. Style is where you can break those bones, right? Style is where you can kind of do some funky stuff for the fun of it, and is really where your voice will come out and really enhances the bones, makes it yours versus just a piece of ChatGPT slop. All right. So let's talk about style. So clarity, narrative, and appeal are the unbreakable foundations of science writing. Your style is what will tie everything together. Right? Style cannot be taught. Style is just something that you have within you that is a composite of everything and everything that you are and all the media that you have consumed and enjoyed and hated and forgotten. Right? Style is both emergent, meaning it comes from within you, and directed, meaning you can choose to change your style, but it does come from inside of you. And here's something that I want to drive home. Write, read, write, read, write, and read. Your style will emerge and you can refine it, right? I've seen people, aspire to write. I want to study these writers. I'll study these writers, and I want to write like this person. But then I don't write. This is super frustrating for me. I just write, dude. If you want to develop style, the most important thing is not to study. It's to just find out what's inside of you first, and then you can, if you want to copy me, you can copy me, right? But the first thing you need to do is actually write something down. Okay, so. Here's an analysis of style, and I'm going to focus on the bird flu video I did with Clockwork because he contributed his own segment for that. And so here's pretty much my message to Clockwork. I said, hey, Clockwork, I think that I would like your help for this particular section for my video. I need you to tell the story of this protein PB1F2 because I just can't do it justice. Like, it's so cool, but I can't animate like you, and I need your help. So I wanted Clockwork to fill in the blank with this story. PB1F2 aggregates into fibrils, these fiber structures that build up like in Alzheimer's. Fibrils are aggregates, they're just clumped up proteins, similar to the ones that prions make. I basically said, please allude to prions so that I can say the word prion in the video, but these won't give you a prion disease. And then these fibers skewer the mitochondria. They pop the mitochondria. Well, not pop, but they bleed out the mitochondria, essentially. The membrane integrity is then compromised, and then they shoot out their cytochrome C, and then talk about cytochrome C's function. And then cytochrome C causes apoptosis, causes the cell to self-destruct. And then please tie it all together. PB1F2 kills the cell because it skewers their mitochondria, right? So this is the story I told Clockwork to tell. And what he came back with was actually something very different than what I was expecting, but that difference is interesting, right? Okay, so a lot of text here. So I'm just going to read this out loud. Could pretend like this is a 5 video. On the left-hand side, this is the draft. This is my first draft. This was when I was first writing the script before I asked Clockwork for help. And I just wrote this down thinking I wouldn't need any help. But after I wrote this, I was like, actually, Clockwork would be really helpful. And then on the right is an excerpt from Clockwork's segment. So I'll just read these two side by side. And you can, as I'll say later on, don't think about the writing. Just feel the writing. Feel the emotions behind the writing, because that's going to help you more understand our style, right? Like, feel emotions, imagine some imagery, don't turn your brain on too much. Just receive and embrace and live in the moment for a second. Okay, my draft. Don't underestimate this tiny protein because PB1F2 punches far beyond its weight class, as it is one of the core determinants of pathogenicity in dangerous subtypes of the influenza virus. While there are a ton of different functions that PB1F2 fulfills for the influenza virus, we'll talk about just one. PB1F2 is a protein that straight up kills macrophages, monocytes, and NK cells by triggering apoptosis or programmed cell death. How PB1F2 does this is unlike any other mechanism I've ever seen. And honestly, I've had a lot of trouble with visualizing how this works. Here's, when I assumed Clockwork was going to help me. Luckily, I've got a master of the mitochondria here with me. Clockwork, take it away. One of the ways PB1F2 kills host is by binding to a negatively charged lipid in the membrane of the mitochondria. PB1F2 then aggregates into fibrils, screwing the mitochondrial membrane. Yes, the same fibril superstructures that make prion diseases so terrifying. This releases a protein called cytochrome C into the host cytosol. If you've ever taken biochemistry, or are about to, you will be very familiar with this protein as it plays an important role in performing the powerhouse of the cell functions of the mitochondria. Plug Clockwork maybe? Reach out to Clockwork for ATP synthase clip? Like, I wasn't originally asking for a full collab because I didn't want to burden Clockwork with having to do work for my channel. I was originally just going to ask him for the animations, but again, very happy that he donated his time to this video. If the mitochondrial membrane integrity is disrupted, however, cytochrome C can bind to the endoplasmic reticulum, where it then triggers the release of pro-apoptotic signaling factors that lead to the demise of the host cell. Okay. This is Clockwork's version. Hey folks, I'm Clockwork. I tell stories about biochemistry using molecularly accurate animations. This PB1F2 mechanism is wild, so let's not waste any time. Okay, so our infected cell is getting hit with the full-length version of PB1F2. Shorter variants of this disordered little fella tend to be less pathogenic than the long boy we're dealing with here. In particular, PB1F2 is such bad news for a cell's mitochondria. Sure, mitochondrions like this one are the powerhouse of the cell, but you're about to see that they do so much more. Zooming in real quick, mitochondria have lots of these giant pores on their outer membrane. This one's Tom 40. Let's rotate our view and cut away half of this membrane so you get a better view of just how beefy this pore complex is. These viral proteins are going to slip through this big channel specifically, and once they do that, they're going to cause some truly incredible mayhem. The chief superpower of your mitochondria is this double membrane. This mitochondrial outer membrane is there to help enclose and stabilize this inner membrane, which is all sorts of folded in on itself, making the little structures like this called cristae. So, two very different voices, and I just want to hang on this slide for a bit to give you a little time to breathe with receiving all of that information. Hey Phil, just took my first mole bio exam. Wanted to say your content helped me study. Thank you so much. Again, I don't think of myself as a replacement for your teachers, but I will accept being a supplement for your teachers. So that's awesome that you did, that you finished your exam. And I hope it goes well. Incredibly different energies, right? Even though we're both science communicators, and I would argue we both cover about the same level of complexity, just in different ways. But you can tell that the words that we choose are very different, and this is where style develops, right? Where style emerges from. And I want to give you a little time to think for yourself ways in which you would describe my style and Clockwork style. And I want to compare that to what I think our styles differ. So yeah, take a couple of a minute or two, chat, and tell me before I give you my interpretation how you think our styles differ. Remember, this is the same story that we're telling here, so you can make a one-to-one comparison here. What I can feel is that your draft file feels a lot more info dense, but Clockwork's draft feels more energetic. Pacing, density, and energy fluctuate, but get the same point across, and that's super neat. Yeah, I love those descriptive words, pacing, density, and energy. And you and Tretron, sorry, you can correct me if I'm saying your name wrong. You and Tretron are pointing out the same thing, density. My style is more quicker, but also more dense. Yes, exactly. That is exactly what I've picked up upon. Clockwork likes to rag on himself for being wasteful with words, but it's not it's not functionless, right? It's like junk DNA, right? It's not really junk DNA. It's non-coding DNA. I would say my draft has a lot more coding DNA, and Clockwork has less coding DNA. But that doesn't mean it's not useful, right? Because the effect that it produces is a difference in pacing, right? Creature Who Likes Dragons says your style is more quicker. That's because I like a faster pace. That's just my preference, right? I think Clockwork is more sparse but more melodic. I love that word too, melodic. Yours more explanative. Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Okay, I love that. I love that because now we're thinking about how to analyze style, right? And I'm not saying one style is better than the other. It's just, you know, this is where the artistry comes in. Everybody's different here. Every goddamn paragraph has to qualify some goddamn thing. My mRNA is so full of hairpins. You might hate the way you write because that's what I'm taking away from it, but yeah, people love the way you write too, right? It's just I have a certain training that predisposes me to write densely, right? I come from a very heavily higher level academic background, like grant writing and thesis writing and stuff like that, and that bleeds into my communication as well. You're doing less visuals narration. I wonder if that says something about your production. Yes. I'm so happy that I don't have to explain this to you. That as my audience, you can already analyze those aspects of style, right? I do not narrate visuals because it, for me, slows down the pacing. And for me, pacing is very important. And I'm not saying it's better, right? Because I've had comments in my YouTube comments say that I go too fast, especially if English isn't your first language, and I apologize. But in terms of me, because I don't have the beautiful visuals that Clockwork can animate, I have less of your attention to rely upon, right? My stuff has to be fast and snippy because I don't have a gorgeous myofibril to show you on screen to kill the time a little bit, to allow the production value to sink in, right? If I wrote like Clockwork, I don't think people would watch my videos because I don't have something for you to look on screen. Like it doesn't work for me, for my style. But that doesn't mean it's bad because as I'm going to point out, right? Clockwork needs a slower script because he has beautiful visuals, right? Clockwork has beautiful visuals. If he wrote like me, you would only look at that actin fibril for like 2 seconds and it would be gone in the next frame. That can't happen, right, for his video. It doesn't work. He needs quote unquote wasted words so that you look at the animation. And that's style. That's style, right? That's style. One thing I wonder about, my writing knows it's for an animation, calls it out constantly, whereas I can literally enjoy a Fi video as a podcast if I really need to. That's also an excellent observation because before I did YouTube, I was a podcaster. So my style emerged at first because I don't have the ability to animate, right? I often say in my streams, like I have like so little talent. Like if you can draw, I have so much respect for you. I have Toxo, who draws the nice drawings. I have Mylan, who contributes nice drawings. And then the rest of the art, I scribble on Photoshop and it's terrible. And I can't make that retentive for a broad audience. So this style emerged of like very dense but accessible information, right? I'm throwing a lot of ideas at you with very few words, which I said was bad before, but I need to do it because my visuals aren't as good. And as a result, it flows more like a podcast, right? It gets to the point faster. So if you wanted to just listen to me, and again, I'm the most proud of my script in terms of the video. Like, I like my animations. I think they're fun. But my highest point of pride is the way that I sound. When I edit a script, I read the script out loud because the way that my words sound is really, really important to me. I want to make sure that it is enjoyable as a piece of narration as well as a video, right? Yeah. It feels more emotionally expressive and feels like it's trying to build more excitement for the subject itself rather than what is on screen. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're referring to me or Clockwork, but I think that is a through line of both of our writing. Is we are excited for the stuff that we're talking about. It's interesting, right? It is interesting. Are wasted words if they are they wasted words if they're required for the medium you try to tell? The thing is, I don't know if Clockwork is even aware that he does this, right? Clockwork, you can tell me if this is novel insight to your writing process. Because if you are calling them wasted words, I get the feeling that you did not realize that they serve an actual function so that you can have your animations on screen for longer. And I hope what I can get across is that there's a lot to pick apart in style, right? And once you start analyzing your own style, I think writing gets so much fun. I think writing gets so much fun when you start analyzing your own style. Like I said earlier, it's like running down a hill versus gliding on a long ice path. Both are easy and doable. I love that. I love that analogy, right? No, like our styles, I think both are merged from our talents, like what our backgrounds are in and how we choose to make art, but also it's functional, right? It's functional. Okay, so my interpretations on our stylistic differences, right? I do a bit more personification of entities, right? I'm a little more playful with the idea. This is not in that segment, but just knowing Clockwork's work and knowing my own work, is I draw a lot of personifications because of my background in like D&D and general storytelling. I like to personify concepts, personify bacteria, etc., etc. It's not always kosher to do that in biology education, but we're on YouTube, so it's fine. I use words like skewer for the dramatic effect. I think we both do this, but I am more aware when I do it because it's deliberate. When when I'm reading my own work, like skewer, I want you to feel skewer the mitochondria, right? Like it's a story, it's a villain, it's high action and stuff, right? For pacing, I was expecting to keep this section very short, right? Like this is the entire segment, and this is the first 1/8 of Clockwork's work. So you can tell that Clockwork likes to spend a lot more time on these because Clockwork's style is to dive very deeply into a topic, and mine is more synthesis, as I'll point out in a bit. For pacing, yeah, since I can't show as much of the how, I focus on the overall narrative, right? Because I don't have the animation tools that Clockwork has, so even if I wanted to, I can't. And in terms of like the poetry in our words, I think I wax more poetic with regards to exceptions and rules in biology. Like in terms of an artistic tool, I rely a lot more on subversion of expectations, exceptions in biology, surprising things, because I like little surprises, right? But I think Clockwork is more about unraveling the natural beauty of biology, if I had to say. Clockwork, much more illustrative, right? He's the blender master, right? The blender guy for biology. Beautiful, beautiful work. And so, yeah, again, my script would not work in his video because it wouldn't give his animations room to breathe. And he focuses a lot more on the how. I simplify a lot in my videos, right? I'd leave out, basically, when I try to communicate a Clockwork idea, I basically just say biology is a bunch of weird shapes bumping into one another, which encompasses broadly what Clockwork is also saying, but Clockwork makes it fun and interesting and deep, whereas I hand wave all of that complexity because it doesn't serve my thesis. So he goes into incredible dissection on the minutiae as an appeal to thoroughness, right? Like Clockwork's work is amazing if you want to have a professional level of understanding on a given topic. Thank you so much, Idri, for becoming a member. Thank you so much. Because let me tell you, Clockwork's video on ATP synthase is professional grade. If you watch and understand that video, you will walk away with a better understanding of ATP synthase than the average undergraduate biology student, right? You will walk away with a deeper understanding. Like his video goes in deeper than what an intro biochem class would even cover. So if you like that thoroughness, then Clockwork style is quite good. Quite good. And he also waxes poetic on the mechanics of biology and biochemistry, right? Because he is a biochemistry channel, there's a lot of moving parts, right? There's a lot of molecular machines. And this is also something that I don't know if I updated my spread on my thing on this, but like, yeah, I do. Some other stylistic differences here, right? And you are the cell. Yeah. So as people have noted, my style is more dense. It's a little more academic coded, right? I used the term core determinant. You know, who out there in the regular public is using the term core determinant? Core determinant is a word that you use when you are doing science, like real paper writing, right? Core determinant happens all the time. Thank you so much, Ryanite, Ryanite for joining membership. Thank you so much. So, but the thing is I like to use academic language because the effect that I am trying to produce in my audience is that I am trying to make sure that I am trying to make sure that you as my audience understands that I respect your intelligence, right? I am not bending the knee to go down to your level. I don't want you to feel like I am babying you. And I deliberately keep this academic language in the videos, not as a way to gatekeep, right? But as a way to show you, to give you the experience, like I am talking to you like you are my equal, which you are. My intellectual equal. I don't believe I am smarter than anybody else. I am probably your biology superior, don't get me wrong, but you are my intellectual equal, which means I will talk to you as if you were my intellectual equal, and I will only simplify when I absolutely need to because you don't know as much biology as I do. But outside of that, I will try to treat you as if you are very smart because you are. Right? And that is a stylistic choice. Other people might view that as very stuffy and like, oh, this guy's using big words. This is not for me. That's fine. I'm not for you if you don't want to hear me use big words. That's a part of style, is also rooting people out who are not going to be enjoying your content anyway. It's important to remember that both styles are amazing. There's no wrong way to do it. Exactly. There's no wrong way to do it. And our styles emerged to improve us over time, right? I'm not saying we're perfect, but I'm saying we're getting better over time. And part of that getting better is refining our style to better appeal to the audience we want to appeal to. My style requires a much slower pace. If I tried to write a review paper, I would write a 3-volume textbook. Yeah. But I think people love that about you, Clockwork. There is value in trusting your audience to dial down the resolution, but it's like different strokes for different folks, right? Like the mental operation that happens in the brain of my video versus your video is different, right? For your video, it feels like the subjective feeling I get is that we have a shovel and we're digging, and every time we dig, we don't know much farther we're digging, but it's so exciting to be digging because it's like, oh my god, how deep are we digging, right? The subjective feeling I want to create in my videos is that you are actively using your brain to pull connections from everything that you know about biology, even if you don't know much. And I'll get to that in a second. The true path through life science writing is to find moments to be Phi and find moments to be Clockwork. Not a perfect yin yang, but both styles so valuable for guiding audience through the bio. Yeah, that's why there's no right or wrong answer. I think what I mean by style is emergent is, like, I think your style works very well for biochemistry, and my style works for a more broad biology thing, right? Because I don't focus too much on any subdivision of molecular biology. I kind of just do everything, but I don't go into that much depth into any of it. It's like, here's the information so you can understand as an equal, because that's the purpose of explaining of all of this. Yes, I am trying to bring you up to my understanding instead of like baby birding the food into your mouth, right? Because that's what I want. That's the effect I want to create in you, is I want you to feel smart because you are smart. And to feel smart, I need to treat you with the respect that I would treat a colleague, you know? And you know, different strokes for different folks. The YouTuber I want to be is a YouTuber who does insist that the audience is very smart without hopefully losing too many people. Yeah. I think the opposite would happen. If visuals are too pretty and your talking is too dense, people will just ignore what you're saying in favor of looking at the pretty picture. Exactly. That's why it's like emergent, right? Emergent. I don't like how it feels like I'm forcing my audience to accept baby bites all the time. No. I can, as someone who watches your content too, the baby biting is appreciative because the visuals are complex, right? Oh, I wanted to point out here before I move away, like, we don't, as you know, the two of us, we don't rely on cutaway gags all that often. You know, some people do. Oversimplified, history channel, loves to do cutaway gags, and I love oversimplified, but I cannot write like that. Like the script should be listenable as a podcast. I think mine more so just because I have a bit of podcasting background, but it should be listenable, right? Flow, I think we both treat very seriously, and we both have high level content, right? Like I think both of our contents are as hard as each other's content. Very respectable of people's intelligence. My wife is really proud of my videos and tries to show clocks on them when a new one comes out. Latest video, she tried and his eyes glazed over, and he literally asked, "Can we watch Mr. Fly instead?" I have the benefit of being a cartoon character. I was legit about to say Clockworks. I rewind / rewatch segments to get the full grasp of a lot. I don't rely. Yeah, okay. Clockwork you can rewatch because Clockwork stuff is so beautifully expressive that your brain doesn't mind rewinding. My stuff, I tend not to rely on hoping an audience rewatches certain segments. So instead, I'll just ask them to pause while I put a bunch of text on the screen. Yeah. Okay, so other things. So the way that I construct my grand strategy is that I want you to feel like biology is a weave, right? I want you to feel like biology is this amazing quilted carpet, and every video is one thread in that weave. So I ask for a lot of synthesis, right? I ask you to remember a lot of things about biology. I always define apoptosis every time I say apoptosis, but I'm trying to get you to pick up on these concepts over time. You know, I'm very self-referential. A 5 video has like 3 callbacks to other videos I've made because I want you to feel like you are watching One Piece. There's like 1,000 anime epic saga of evolution, but I don't require you watch me in order, right? That's why these self-references are not sequential. You don't have to watch my video on prions to enjoy my video on the flu, but I will refer to the prion video because everything in biology is connected. And my interpretation of my own writing is that I am trying to get you to feel the connection in biology, right? Every video I make is related to something else that I've made. And the more videos I make, the more callbacks I could make. It's actually gone to the point where I'm like, I could call back to my flu video, but that would be the 4th callback in this video, and I can't do that. That's too annoying. So it's gotten to the point where I have to be very careful about the self-references because it's starting to get a little distracting. But I want you to feel that all these ideas are connected in this grand story. That's what I want you to leave with. Right? Oh. So... and I mentioned this before. I have a high-level script. I talk to you as if you are my intellectual equal, but in order to make it accessible, I have goofy-ass cartoons on the screen, right? I have goofy Photoshop cartoons that I draw with my mouse to simplify the ideas so that you can focus on what I'm saying, and the visuals are just there for a little bit of extra reinforcement. That's why I say I'm most proud of my scripts, less proud of my animations. Clockworks is the other opposite, right? High-level visuals because you're looking at biochemistry, professional grade biochemistry, stuff that you would see in a classroom. But it is a low-level script because you need time to digest. That's why earlier I said, think about your sentence length, right? Think about your idea, your information density. Clockwork cannot have my information density, or his videos would not do well because people would get lost. So tune your information density for whatever medium, for whatever idea you want to communicate, right? I'm calling back to the thing that I taught you about earlier today. Yeah. My wife says you don't quilt a carpet. That's coming from a major craft hobbyist. Whoops. My bad. So, yeah. Yeah, and as Clockwork himself said, he asks for a lot of investment into a deep dive, right? He is asking a favor from the audience. Please stay with me till the end. I promise you there's a cookie for you at the end, and that cookie is how incredible this thing is. So Clockwork is doing that challenge narrative structure all the time because he has to. His content is very challenging. Okay. So, personal style, style is personal, so take any criticism with a grain of salt, right? Like, I can't tell you how to write. right? I can tell you the bones. Take the bones and then do whatever you want with it. Your style will emerge from you, and then you can refine your style consciously. But I cannot tell you how to write. So just setting up for the last part of this stream. I wonder what Phi thinks about speeding up science videos. You can do whatever you want. I don't mind if you speed me up. That's totally fine. I already talk very fast, so I'm surprised that you would speed me up. That's totally fine. Okay. So let's briefly talk about process. Process is different for everybody. My process is actually nuts, right? I don't recommend you do my process to start off with. So I usually start a script just by reading enough just to sense the story. You know, like how am I going to set up the narrative? And then I write the most basic outline humanly possible. I'm talking like 50 words, like just I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that, I want to talk about that. And then I write a first draft. Like I go almost raw into the first draft because I care a lot about how my video sounds, right? I care a lot about the word choice and the listenability of my stuff. And I personally feel like an outline artificially constrains my ability to make something podcastable, listenable. That doesn't mean it's any less rigorous because I edit that draft like 1,000 times. Like I'm still editing the stupid abiogenesis script so that it sounds correct to my ear. And then I make the video, and then I get one video watch through with Toxo, who checks it for clarity from a non-expert person. Toxo's understanding of biology is quite good, but not like expert level. So she's like a very good audience member to have for my video. And then after she helps me work out with places, you know, pinch points, then I just publish from there, right? Style is also something that develops over time. Exactly. It emerges. Just write, and that style will automatically come up. Yeah. What do I think about Krikazad and how they present certain information about things like the immune system? They have $1 billion and a billion team members, and they maximize clarity at the cost of personality. Like there are personalities in the birds and the animations. It's cute, but it is as broadly appealing as possible. And for me, you lose out on a bit of like the weirdness that personal communication can have, right? When you have multiple people working on a project, you kind of form an aggregate style, but an aggregate style feels a little less personal. Here's something that I want to point out about Clockwork. Like my like narrative focus is biology is a weave, right? Biology is interconnected threads. Clockwork is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Clockwork says you are biology a lot. This is your powerhouse of the cell. This is a rhetorical move that Clockwork does to make you feel connected to the subject matter and to get you to, and, you know, it's an appeal to wonder as well, right? Like, oh, isn't it amazing that this thing lives in your body, right? So that's a key element of what I am interpreting as Clockwork's style. Is you often find him saying, this is your blah, blah, blah. This is your DNA copying machine. This is your XYZ, right? Clockwork variation of the Phi process, no outline, read enough, and then make a serviceable draft. Wow, you don't even make an outline. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't recommend it. I recommend an outline. I only do it this way because I personally value the poetry of the words that I'm trying to use, right? It has to sound right to my ear, and outlines make it a little confusing to do that. Yeah. They also launder speculation and random opinions into a cartoony presentation that effectuates more persuasion and authority than they like to pretend. I do respect Kirkazad a lot as science communicators. You know, they are trying to be, and the thing is, yeah, like they are trying to be authorities, and that's going to rub people the wrong way, no matter what opinions they have. But I do respect that, because in my videos I'm not an authority, right? I make that very clear, and I don't make health recommendations, right? That's a big part of my channel. Is I cover biology, I cover the state of things, I try my best to do the research, but I would never tell you, you know, don't vape, vaping is bad for you, right? That's unless it's something that is inarguably true, right? Something that is so not controversial that I can state it as fact, but I will not touch those same subjects. So Kirkazad, you might have issues with how they present authority, but I'll just say it's a rough job to try to be an authority. And it is worth having trustworthy communicators inhabit spots of authority somebody has to do it, right? Somebody has to do it, especially when sometimes your official government resource might not be like the most trustworthy. You can speculate what I mean about that. Yeah, it's not your cell, a thing separate from you. It's literally you, which is why I focus so hard on human proteins, even when prokaryotic mechanisms are so much better understood. Yeah, exactly. Like Clockwork makes the active choice to relate biology to you, the viewer, whereas I am more impersonal, right? I am more focused on biology as a story, which means I like when I say like look at art as if there were feelings first. This is what I'm saying. When I watch a Clockwork video, I feel like Clockwork is showing me a cool bug he found. Hey, Fi, check out this cool bug I found. Check out all these things about this bug. It's very personal, right? It feels very kind in certain ways. My videos, I am making the attempt to communicate to you as if we were around a campfire and I'm telling you a story, right? So those are the effects, and you can see those effects in the videos that we make. And whenever we release new videos, you can now be conscious of the fact that Clockwork is talking to you as if you are maybe not a friend, but like, hey, check out a cool bug I found. That kind of friendliness is something that I don't typically do in my videos, whereas instead I'm more like, we're all gathered around a campfire and I want your attention. Your attention is on me. Like I'm assuming, I'm encroaching, I am asking for that level of respect, whereas Clockwork doesn't necessarily ask for that level of respect, but you give it to him anyway because he's so good. Okay. A friend told me you were live. I just want to say hi. Hi, Lucrezia. I should have given you a shout out too. Rico, who was in chat, is a nurse VTuber, does some sci-comm content on health. And Lucrezia is another VTuber who also does biology content. She is a geneticist, which is very, very interesting. I took being the single worst guy to run into at a party and turn into a whole ass career. Some people love that guy, man. Okay. So why don't I bother with detailed outlines? My style is to follow the story. Outlines are important when you need to be precise and effective for ideas, right? Like if I were writing a review paper, if I were writing a grant proposal, outline like crazy. You need an outline for certain. But since I'm choosing to lean into entertainment, I will sacrifice a clearer line. Like I will sacrifice clarity for entertainment sometimes when I deem it necessary, right? When I deem it necessary. So many people in the field of content creation and or science, and I'm just some guy. Some guy is some guy, right? I'm also just some guy, right? I'm a guy who couldn't draw. I'm a guy who couldn't make a traditional job as a biologist work out. So I pivoted into entertainment, right? Everybody is just some guy, but you can practice a skill and have it be better than most people. And since it is your unique style, you are putting yourself out there, and that will attract some people, because I believe inherently that most people on this planet have something likable about them. So I encourage you to make art and put yourself out there. Okay. So no matter what your process is, writing is rewriting. Expect to be changing your stuff all the time. Your first draft sucks, okay? Okay, your first draft definitely sucks, okay? I'm telling you, the first thing that you will write will suck. And when you hate it, that's correct. You should hate your first draft. It should suck. And then when you rewrite it, you hate it less, and that's perfectly normal. And that's how you become a better writer. You don't become a better writer by writing great things. You become a better writer by rewriting your old stuff. That's how you improve. Okay, a framework for effective feedback. We've kind of been doing this entire time, but I just want to emphasize, right? The YouTube has been a cesspool. Fandoms are a cesspool because everybody was making a video essay. This property, Hazbin Hotel's bad. K-pop Demon Hunter, good, bad, whatever, right? These vague terms that I don't like because they're not precise in nature. I'm a writing guy. I love precision in language. Tell me what you mean, and don't leave me with anything. Tell me exactly what you mean is what I prefer. So instead of talking about whether or not something is good or bad, I like to take a more emergent stance. You should think about critique as being emotional at first. Don't use your brain. Don't look for, oh, did this person use a topic sentence, right? Like when you first read through something or when you first experience a piece of art, don't look at strokes, right? Don't look at, Da Vinci did, wow, what a thing, right? Like what a good use of the stencil or whatever, right? Just look at the Mona Lisa and just feel for a second. Anything, right? It doesn't have to be high art. It can be a video. Just feel. If you're trying to study it, you should feel it first. Then put your emotions into words. And some of you need therapy because that can be hard for some of you, right? It was hard for me. I got therapy. I'm much better at it now. Therapy made me a better artist. You should feel the emotion, describe the emotion, interpret the emotion, right? Your emotions are your raw data. You cannot ignore your raw data. You must accept that your audience will feel emotions, and you must accept those emotions as being real and legitimate. Now, interpreting emotions is where you have some wiggle room, right? Your test audience might not reflect your true desired audience, so you can vary your interpretation, right? You know, I'm saying this because some of you, I think Tretren has submitted something about safety engineering and cosplay. And I actually really liked the piece, but I'm not the target audience, so I don't really care about cosplay. So I am going to give you my raw emotional data. It's going to be up to you to decide what to do with it, right? Emotions as raw data is so accurate. It's true. It's so true. Good and bad are personal taste, not critique in my eyes. Exactly. Anybody who says an art is good or bad is just like not worth listening to, I think. They should be specific about a claim. Be specific about a claim. Where should I publish a written work, be it crude passion or otherwise? My first work, I'm planning to make a whole college final exam taken from the perspective of a group project between two different people. I mean, you could make a YouTube video. That's the most obvious place. I'm not as familiar with writing only, but before, I specifically did a podcast to practice for YouTube. So you can also try to format it in a podcastable format too, if that is something you're interested in. Okay. So it's up to you to interpret my emotions, but you have to accept that my emotions are real. I would not lie to you, right? So I'm going to tell you my raw data. You interpret it and act on it however you want. I will give you suggestions though, right? If you don't know what to do with my emotions, I'll tell you what I would do with my emotions, and then you can adapt it however you want. In this way, I want to make feedback not feel prescriptive, because something that annoys me about writing professors is that they just tell you how to fix your writing, but it doesn't feel like you. In this way, in this strategy, I am giving you the data and I am trusting that you will act upon it correctly, because I cannot tell you how to write as you. I can only tell you what your art makes me feel. Okay? That's how this is going to work. That's how this is going to work. Okay, so I do not take your choice to leave my feedback behind personally, right? If you want to ignore all of my feedback, that's totally fine. If you ignore my suggestions, it means you will have ruled out one method out there, further developing your style. No matter what you think of my advice, this will be helpful. Okay, this will be helpful. Okay, so Tretren, you are still in chat. Good, so I can critique your work live. So thank you for submitting some work. So I had a Google form, a form that asked different questions to allow me to understand the context of this work. So who is the intended audience for this piece, and what is this piece? So Tretren wrote, the primary audience is to be DIYers, do-it-yourself people, and hobbyists who are decent in working with electronics, but do not have the engineering mindset going. The secondary audience is more expert creators. I want them to have a deeper understanding and see my writing/videos as a new perspective on what they already do. Okay, so safety is what we're doing here. What aspect of the writing would you like feedback on? I want to make safety engineering a more easy to understand subject matter. Safety is rarely ever fun, but I want to give both an in-depth explanation of safety engineering that is engaging to actually read and listen about. What I've written below is the start of a large project to discuss safety within costumes/cosplay and how to think of safety while making wearable electronics. Okay, so this last sentence is really important, right? So the audience is going to be people who broadly are interested in safety engineering, but also cosplay people. Okay, so that's important. So this is the work, this is the piece. I will read it out loud, and then we're going to bask in the emotions. So as we are reading this together, every sentence, reflect on what your brain is doing and what emotions you are feeling, okay? The basis of any type of engineering is to ensure that everyone around the table has a similar level of understanding of the subject. In safety engineering, this is no different. It is even more important as misunderstandings can lead to different ways of implementing the systems at hand. While it's a bit cliche to define words in any thesis or write-up, as it's seen as an easy way to inflate the word count, here I want to take this moment to do so. I do not know if you, the watcher, will have the same understanding of what safety is, so let's begin. Webster's Dictionary, nope. The Webster's Dictionary holds no power where we are going. Prepare for the IEC norms to flood in. So safety is defined within the IEC 61508 norm as freedom from unacceptable risk of physical injury or of damage to the health of people, either directly or indirectly as a result of damage to property or to the environment. A bit of a dry way to put it. Let me put it in more practical terms. Should not set you on fire when it fails. It shouldn't set your friend on fire, and it ideally should fail in a way that does not cause the fire department to have a really interesting case study of the insane situation that happened. Okay, so let's take a moment. Let's just bask in this work for a bit. Feel the emotions that you are feeling. Reflect on them for a second. And I'm not gonna ask, unless Tretren, you're okay with your fellow stream viewers for feedback, but I'm gonna ask, unless you have explicit permission from Tretren, to not give your feedback out loud, because I cannot guarantee that you will give feedback in a way that I find to be helpful, unless Tretren will allow it. Okay, they're okay with it. They're okay with it. Okay, so here is my raw emotional data through this piece. So this first sentence felt difficult for me. I'm feeling like I'm not the target audience for this work. I'm immediately feeling a little alienated, which might be okay if you do not think of me as your target audience or close to your target audience, right? Because you have your target, but you probably also want to aim a little more broad than just your target, right? So if you do not determine me to be in or around your target audience, maybe this is okay, but I'm just reporting the raw data. Here, I'm a little bored, right? While it's a bit cliche, is also a cliche. It is also a cliche. So here is a lot of words that I don't think necessarily need to be there unless you have some fun visual to go along with this, right? Like if you're doing a clockwork and you are pacing the visual here for some reason. Where would I send in a writing excerpt? My Discord. I can do occasional writing workshops regularly, but if you do exclamation point Discord, there was an announcement that I was collecting writing samples. Okay, so yeah, this sentence, I'm a little bored here. This sentence I actually really like, right? So let's begin. Webster's Dictionary. No, the Webster Dictionary holds no power where we are going. I think this is very funny. And I do think this is a good way to introduce what is otherwise a dry concept, right? So I do like this quite a bit. And then the tension of being confused is relieved. I feel relieved when finishing this sentence, right? So like there's a bit of like, why do I care here, right? The IEC stuff is dry and I'm not really internalizing what this is saying because it is so indigestible, right? Like it's a little boring to read too because it is coming from an official book. But when you put it this way, this is funny, this is engaging, and I am relieved, right? This starts with strategic tension because you're like, oh, this is, take a look at this thing, right? It's a boring little thing. And I am now relieved that this is no longer boring by the end of this. So those are that's the raw data here. So how am I interpreting it and what are my suggestions? So I was a little alienated at the beginning because I felt like this wasn't for me, right? And this is my interpretation. I think starting a safety lecture by talking about how important safety is telling and not showing. If this is specific to cosplay people, I would attack them right there, right? Go for defining your audience right there, right? So here's what I would do, right? If you don't find this funny or worthwhile doing, you don't have to do it, but this is what I would do. Instead, I would start specifically with the cosplay community, maybe with an anecdote gone wrong. Like if there's a horrible news story about a cosplayer who burned themselves with electronics or something, you might want to tell that story first. And this is very much my style, right? Okay, this is a compliment to you, Tretron, right? Because I wanted to make your video. Okay, I like the premise, and I could easily imagine it in my own voice because I think the style is quite engaging. And so this is my style. I would do a slideshow of unsafe cosplays with the can playing in the background. So you can think the can is a very high energy song, right? And you can hear like there's this fun upbeatness to it, and that contrasts with like horrible cosplay injuries or something, right? Or trip hazards or something, and you can illustrate all the ways in which your cosplays are more dangerous than you have them believe. This way you aren't starting with just the concept of safety, which is not a very, in my opinion, not a very exciting way to start a conversation, but instead you are pointing out, oh yeah, a lot of these very impressive cosplays do look quite dangerous when you point them out, right? Jump scare can. This is a recycled joke from a script that I threw out. I was gonna make a can montage in my video about giant viruses, but I chose not to, mostly because I didn't want to sing the can. Okay, so then the next feeling I got was boredom. It took a little long, I think, for you to get to your joke about the dictionary. The joke lasts for a bit too long, in my opinion. Again, this is my voice. This is how I would write. And I would just remove a lot of the fluff to get to your joke faster, because your joke is very funny. And then I found joy, right? I think the dictionary holds no power where we're going. That's a fantastic line. I love that line. I'm hooked. If I can make it to that line, then I've gotten a sense for who you are as a person, and I've gotten a sense for what your style is, right? So how would I fix this? I would cut straight from the intro directly into the Webster dictionary thing, and I'll rewrite your thing in my voice so that you see that. And then I felt relief, because you built up the tension with the unfriendly academic language, and then you put it into casual terms, which provided some relief, provided some reward, because I understood the complicated thing, right? And I think that's good. So here's my second pass. I'm deleting everything in red here. Deleting this because I think you don't need this. Like, if I go sentence by sentence, I don't really think that this is... I think this is too many words to say what you want to say. So I would say that I would probably remove this and replace. And then pointing out that this is dry, you already kind of do that in the following sentence. So this is a bit of pacing filler, which I don't think is strictly necessary if you want to have a higher energy, more dense writing style. So this is my suggestion. So my suggestion is a cold open to your video, if this is a video, a slideshow of anonymized cosplays with clear safety violations, or if this is a blog post, maybe just a picture, right? And an arrow going like, this is a trip hazard, or this is an electrical fire hazard, or whatever. With 2 or 3 arrows that pop up every time with what is wrong. So you pop up the cosplay, and then bing. An arrow points to the part that is dangerous, and then 2 or 3 words, fire hazard, right? And if you do that with a lot of cosplays, I think that's really funny and a very engaging way to start the video. And then I think you just start with your joke, right? Webster, it's a good joke. Webster Dictionary states that the definition of safety is no, and then you make a really big deal out of it. No, maybe you put it in a green screen animation of the dictionary exploding or something, right? No, Mr. Webster holds no power where we are going. Now we're going to need something that hits harder. I rewrote this joke in my own voice. The International Electrotechnical Commission, or IEC. And then at the end of this paragraph, which I left unchanged, just the transition where you attack a straw man. You might not realize it, but a fair number of cosplays that might look harmless on the outside are actually walking safety violations. So you are reminding the viewer, you opened with a cosplay thing, you are reminding the viewer that we're talking about cosplay so they don't get lost, right? Someone else said earlier, like, what happens when the viewer wanders away? This is your anchor. This is saying, hey, if you got distracted by the IEC definition of safety, I'm providing you a path back to the main idea, okay? And then, this is attacking that straw man, right? But you don't even have to set up a straw man. That straw man's in their head. Most people probably don't think about how dangerous cosplays can be. So you can subvert that expectations by doing this little can open where you point out, oh, this is a fire hazard, trip hazard, whatever. And then you've achieved what I would call buy-in, Okay, now your audience is saying, okay, Mr. Content Creator, Mrs. Content Creator, whatever, you have a point. Cosplays maybe are a bit more dangerous than I was expecting. What are you going to tell me about it? And then from there, you can do whatever you want because you've gotten your audience buy-in. Does that kind of make sense? Chat, what do you think of that? What do you think of that as correct? Not correct. Corrections implies that it's wrong, but suggestions. And Tritron, if you're in chat, how are you reacting to those suggestions and that raw data? Oh. What do y'all think? What do y'all think? Does this sound better? I could have ruined your thing too. That's also possible, and that's also useful, right? If this doesn't get across, like if this ruins the vibe of what you were going for, that's also fine. That just means you don't take these suggestions and then you do something else with the raw data. Or ignore the raw data if you've determined that I am not in or around your target audience. Any thoughts? While I do a bit of hydration. I think it works if you want to be funny / sarcastic throughout. I was kind of thinking that this might be, like, I think humor could have been, like, a part of the writing process because there's that joke on the dictionary. So if you want to keep humor more in the video, then I would think this is good. But if you wanted just to sprinkle in that humor, then maybe you don't do the cold open, right? All right. Okay. Ooh, okay. One more sample. If no one else has anything. Deletes almost all of the writing except the quote from the dictionary. That's not true. It's the quote from the dictionary and then the explanation afterwards, right? This part that I left untouched is really funny, right? This paragraph that I left untouched is really good, I would say. Well, first off, I'm now wanting to open DaVinci Resolve to make that can edit, but other than that, I'm noting down hard because it's interesting, but needs some absorption time. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so I think the core of this is good. And again, I like this video idea. And I think this is a line and a joke that I could not have written, and I really, really enjoy it. Okay. Next up, we will go to, I believe, the second sample. Okay, yeah. This is just like me, like, vaguely putting an idea out there, right? Like, you know, the can, and then like, oh, you have someone in cosplay, and then you pop up an arrow that says heat stroke risk, right? Like, I think that's pretty funny. And can't get you copyrighted, so that's also a plus. And then maybe between shots of cosplayers, you throw up articles about costume to people like getting sent to the hospital due to heat stroke, right? Just something really to sink the investment in, to be like, this is important, you know, this is important, I'm telling you this is important, please stay with me, you know? Yeah, and you know, camera moves down, you know, scrolling through this article about heat stroke for mascots, you know, it's just something like that to really drive home the point, my work is important. Okay, very cool. Okay, second entry, Marlon. I don't know if you're in chat, Marlon, but I also really enjoyed this piece as well for different reasons. So who is the intended audience, Marlon, and what is this piece? Yeah, if you are in chat, Marlon, sound off. So people who seek to understand how patterns in the genome are modeled and understood. So this is very much in my wheelhouse, right? I am a molecular biologist, so I like this because it is molecular biology. So I do want to push you, though, to think about more specifics about, because the more specifics you can imagine about your audience, the better you will understand how you need to write. If you are talking to students, you need your writing to be extremely concise, because you know that they are going to watch your video and they will rewatch your video, and they don't care about entertainment. What they care about is clarity. So you can cut the fat and just do the minimum with regards to fun and entertainment, because you know that they have a different incentive. Their incentive is their grade, right? So if you're doing this for students, you need to be as clear as possible. But maybe you're talking to science curious folk or bio curious folk. Like I would describe my audience as bio curious casual people with some students mixed in. But I'm very clear that I do not intend my content to be used as teaching material. Yeah, so some combination of all these. I am going to be doing this from the perspective of sci-comm. I'm going to assume that your audience is bio-curious, right? I'm assuming that is the audience here. So, what aspect of the writing would you like feedback on? And Marlon says, I'm not sure how to compellingly talk about algorithm stuff. Maybe that might be getting too deep into the weeds. Like maybe this explanation only makes sense to people who already have the computer brain wrinkles. Okay, I love this. I love this attention because you are thinking about the state of your audience, which is great. So worried about, and also, I mentioned this on the V Theorem Discord actually. Like the worst presentations I've ever seen have all come from computational neuroscientists who do not care about the fact that some people in their audience don't have a rigorous computer science background. So I'm giving you major props, Marlon, for wanting your algorithmic content to be accessible by non-algorithmic people. Right? That's huge. I'm very happy to help you with accomplishing this. Okay. So this is the piece. And I'll read it out loud again. Just feel first, and then we'll talk about how and what, to interpret those feelings. So, quick crash course. Our genome contains various patterns, the ones that correspond to RNA outputs being genes. By comparing and contrasting these patterns, we can get an idea if a specific gene is like or is a copy of another existing gene, amongst other things. So how are these comparisons modeled? One technique that's become a mainstay amongst bioinformaticians I have so much trouble with this word. Bioinformaticians. God. Is the basic local alignment search tool, or BLAST. With this technique, biologists have been able to identify and recognize many patterns throughout the genome using a relatively simple and robust scoring system. BLAST finds the longest sequence of bases that matches as according to a scoring matrix chosen beforehand. There's a lot one could get into there, but the decent naive model for learning is that if the items are the same, it gets a positive score, and if they're different, it gets a negative score. We slide a window across the two genes, comparing every possible segment of, say, length 5, with one another. This one has a score of 16. Okay. So, going through my emotions, I got a little confused here with the wording. I'll read the sentence again. By comparing and contrasting these patterns, we can get an idea of if a specific gene is like or is a copy of another existing gene, amongst other things. Like can have different meanings, and the first time I read this, I got a little tripped up on this. So I would just change this to similar to, honestly. I saw all the different badges for the channel membership. How do I get the pretty purple one? You gotta stay a member for 2 years. Some people are very close to that 2-year milestone and will get the Galaxy badge very soon. So now, because you are a new member, you've got the wood virus. Talks through all of them. They're super cute. And then I felt like the transition between these two sentences were a little rushed, right? So I'll read these two in conjunction. By comparing and contrasting these patterns, we can get an idea of if a specific gene is like or is a copy of another existing gene, amongst other things. So how are these comparisons modeled? I'm saying that I'm feeling rushed. But this makes like I understand from this writing that it is very logically follows, right? As a connection point, this makes sense. But as a story, I feel a little rushed here. Something feels like it's missing from the story, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, down here, I'm feeling a little anxious and a little unsure of the scope. So BLAST finds the longest sequence of bases that matches as according to a scoring matrix chosen beforehand. And there's a lot one could get into here, but the decent naive model for learning, and then you explain the basic thing. And here, when you say there's a lot one could get into here, I do this all the time. And I'm reporting that there's a little anxiety here because I'm a little unsure. That might not be a bad thing. I'm a little unsure how deep you are planning to get into here. And you had said earlier on that you are mainly looking to make the algorithmic part of Blast appealing. So you've done a good job at explaining the very basics of Blast here. But, I don't know from the writing how deep you're intending on going. And I think you can change the language to make the intention better known. So in terms of the cognitive path, like reward, expectation, prediction, like I'm feeling pretty good, but I feel like we could be better here. Okay. First, before I get into the table, Tretchen and Marlon, I think you both had great entries. I forgot to say that about yours, Tretchen. I think it's really, and I think I've said it in different ways. Like I want to make your video for you because I like the idea and I like the way that you've started it. And Marlon, I think you did a great job. I would actually say that this is better writing than a first-year biology undergraduate would do in terms of the bones of this. It just, to me, I think there are improvements that could be made for sci-comm purposes. But logically, this is very tight. This has good communication bones. Like the logical ideas flow. I think people will understand this. You can tell because my emotions are not confusion. I'm not confused here. I'm just a little anxious here. But my issues don't have to do with the clarity of your writing because it is pretty clear. I really like this one, and I actually like that they admit there's a lot in the loaded sentence. Made me feel better about being overwhelmed. Yeah, because Marlon is doing that thing that we mentioned earlier, right? Setting up that expectation, right? I am warning you that this next step is going to be kind of complicated, so don't feel too punished if you don't get it. This is really good management there. I think that this could be even better if your goal is to make Blast totally accessible, like all of the algorithmic stuff, right? Which I'm interpreting as your intention. Okay, so here I'm going to break down the various emotions, right? So I had a little initial confusion. I just changed the word like to similar to. It's such a minor detail, but I did note that I did get tripped up reading the segment. If you narrate it with certain emphasis, it might not be confusing. Again, this is such a minor point. And then the feeling of being rushed, because I don't quite care about your video yet. Right? Up until this point, sorry, it's this point, right? So how are these comparisons modeled? I don't know why I care about how these comparisons are modeled. Like you're telling me what these comparisons are for, right? We can get an idea of how genes are like other genes. Okay, cool. If I'm a non-biology person, I don't know why I care. So if you are trying to appeal to bio-curious people, but people who don't have an understanding of why they care about Blast, here's where you can insert something here, a very powerful idea. Right? One sentence to describe why this is important. For the broader health world, maybe. I understand what the comparison does, but I don't really care right now, right? I have not been offered buy-in if I'm thinking from a popular non-biologist background. And then I felt a bit of insecurity, right? Because I can't quite tell who this is for. Like, I think, again, the explanation is clear. You did a great job there. But if I'm predicting the next paragraph, I don't know if you are going to pivot into something else. I don't know if you're going to dive deeper into Blast. Like, I don't know what my expectation should be outside of the segment that you sent. So this is a specialty topic, right? This is a deep dive thing. Blast is not for the casual audience member, but it might be for a bio-curious audience, right? So if this is for students, you can ignore what I'm saying. If this is for students, they know why they're watching your video. They want to learn how to do Blast. They want to know how Blast works. They don't care about the setup. But I'm assuming that this is for a sci-comm audience. So you mentioned that you were worried that you could not make the algorithm stuff accessible and interesting. I'm telling you that you can, actually, and I have a narrative structure to pitch for that, right? And you can be confident in this statement. There is a lot to get into, but for now, here's what you need to know, right? If you change this, there's a lot one could get into, but for now, here's what you need. Then you are promising, you are setting up the expectation that the following paragraph might be more complex, or later on in your work, you might get into that in a deeper way, right? Because this, again, this is good for this paragraph, but long-term vision, I don't know what the next paragraph here is. I can't predict. Okay. And then relief, because I think your actual explanation of blast is really good. I think it actually is really good. Again, better than a lot of first year undergraduates in biology doing a lab report who like they, they might have had all the biology training, but they don't know how to write. So their stuff ends up being very confusing. Okay. So here is where I'll do some edits. This is a personal taste thing. I do this all the time. So I'm criticizing you for the same thing I criticize my own writing. I put in a lot of so's for what I am interpreting as pacing reasons. But if you cut out so's, I think you can make your writing sound a bit more professional in a way that respects your audience's intelligence, right? It just makes it feels less if you want to go for more conversational, you can leave them in. I probably wouldn't have two this soon, one after another, right? So quick crash course. So how are these comparisons modeled? Like these things are too close to each other. If you are going to try to make it sound a bit more conversational, I would cut one of these. I'm doing this all the time, so irony. Yeah, again, I do it all the time, but I root it out in the editing phase because I don't actually like that aspect of my speech. Okay. So I didn't take a lot out here, right? I think you have an understanding, a good understanding of like concision and clarity. Instead, my suggestions are for the sci-comm, right? So I'm adding a sentence here and rearranging something. So this is mostly unchanged, but I'm adding something. By comparing and contrasting these patterns, this is your sentence, we can get an idea if a specific gene is like or is a copy of another existing gene, amongst other things. This can be really important for mapping out how related species are or how closely our model organisms like the mouse really do represent aspects of human biology, right? So I'm asking for a little more buy-in. Like you care about how BLAST functions because BLAST is how we figure out how close we are to monkeys. Something like that, right? And if they don't buy in at that point, they're not the audience for your video. But you need to give a bio-curious audience something to grab onto. And before this sentence, there's not a whole lot to grab onto. Okay, I changed your sentence down here. So it gets kind of complicated, but for now, just know that if the sequences are the same, it gets a positive score. And if they're different, it gets a negative score. And then the rest of your explanation here, which again is great. So that sets up for, we are going to get into the algorithm and we're going to get into it in a way that is accessible, right? You are signaling to your audience, I'm treating you with respect. We're going to talk about algorithms, but we're going to do it one step at a time. So here's how I would actually structure talking about algorithms for a non-expert audience. Okay, yeah, sorry. So this is one route, right? Is to emphasize the importance. Here's some subversion, and I like this one a bit more. Subversion, I think, is fun, and I do it all the time. I'll read the preceding sentence. By comparing and contrasting these patterns, we can get an idea if a specific gene is like or is like a copy of an existing gene, amongst other things. You might think this is a relatively simple process. Can't you just Control F to find similarities? And while something as simple as your Control F find function does do a good job at determining whether two strings are identical, what happens with the two strings are like this or that, and then you pop up two different DNA sequences that are ever so slightly different, or even that. How can you tell between these 5 RNA sequences which genes are more closely related than others? When the sequences are complicated, so must be the algorithm. So how do scientists deal with this ambiguity? And then you introduce BLAST, right? You're building the narrative. There's a problem. Okay, Control F is great if you are looking for identical matches. The drama, the narrative, there's drama here, right? We are always thinking about narrative when we're writing. The drama is that there's a problem. There's conflict, right? This is borrowing from fiction, right? Hero's journey, whatever you want to call it. The conflict here is that this doesn't work for reality, right? Biology is a lot more complicated than an exact match. We need a superhero to come and save the day. That superhero is BLAST. Let me tell you about that, right? So there's a bit more buy-in. You might be a little more interested now to see how this superhero functions, how this hero defeats the villain. Because when you're in a story, the hero's defeating the villain. That's how most stories go. But you want to know how, and this is setting up that how in a kind of way where you can get their buy-in to pay attention to the complicated stuff you're talking about. It's kind of complicated, but for now, just know that, okay, that's the same. Okay, so then you can escalate, right? You give a very high level overview. We have a window, we slide it down the DNA sequence, RNA sequence. We tally a score of some kind. If it's positive, it's good. And then if you want to get really deep into BLAST, then you can transition by saying, let's make things a bit more complicated. You're inviting the viewer to get in deeper. And again, handing out little treats, right? Because this is very easy to understand. And you are saying, ooh, there's more where that came from, right? Like, if you understood that point, you know, you're smart enough for this video, so pay more attention and you'll understand the next point here too, right? You are communicating that even though this algorithm is going to get complicated, if you understood that first point, that second point is also going to be very understandable. And your audience will feel smart. They will continue to watch you. Everyone is happy. Okay, so for context, for those of you who don't have biology background, BLAST is this super awesome algorithm that, again, as Marlon had mentioned in their piece, compares sequences of mRNA or DNA or protein, whatever you want. And it gives you a lot of data about how related that gene is to its neighbors. So here we have the lactase sequence from Homo sapiens, and you can see that the lactase sequence is very similar across different species. So we have pan here. Pan is, I believe, chimps, right? So the pan version of this lactase is very similar. The gorilla, right? Gorillas are pretty similar as well. So this tells you the top matches for relatives of the human lactase gene. So that's the context you need for this. Here's how I would make learning how this algorithm works interesting. What's the difference between BLAST and BEAST? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know too much about BEAST. So you start off the way that you did with the 100% match case, right? This is the simple control F. Does it match? Does it not? And here you already did this. You start with Kramer window sliding, which is just looking at every substring of 5 characters and seeing if they match the other thing. And then you get into a bit of percent identity, right? If 2 strings match identically, they have 100% identity. Then you get into the 99 match case, right? What if we just change one of these letters? What does BLAST need to do to give you a meaningful comparison? And then you can talk about scores. Or again, if you're not in biology, don't worry about this. This is me talking to Marlon and the other biology people. Then you escalate. Okay, 99%, that seems pretty easy to deal with. What about 80%? Now it's a little unclear. If your protein sequence is only 80% different, then you're starting to introduce a bit of ambiguity. Is this really a relative? And what this also does is it reinforces the 2 previous principles. It's just testing your audience's knowledge. So you give them the principle in the 99% match case, and then you ask your audience to put it together for the 80% match case. Dora the Explorer, right? Where, what do we do? How do you interpret this? And then you go into a 20% match case. And here's where you get into philosophy, right? Because BLAST needs to be able to tell you if 2 genes are related. It gives you a number, a statistic, to tell you, yes, these are probably related, or no, these are probably not related. Here's where you introduce E-value for the 20% match case. And this reinforces the entirety of the BLAST algorithm, right? You only need to understand these things: match score, total score, E-value, percent identity, to understand BLAST. So even though this is a complicated computer algorithm, you can break it down with cases. In classrooms, you might see them define Kramer, identity, scoring all at once, and then the students have to struggle to figure it out themselves. But as a content creator, you can give your audience little stickers, little goodie bags, little juice bottles every time they understand a complicated topic that builds into this big topic, right? And again, one of the narrative structures is promising your audience will understand something complicated and making it very easy for them. If it's only 80%, isn't it a lot since small changes massively alter interactions with other genes? We're going to get into a philosophical debate as to whether or not structure or sequence preservation is more important, because some genes are related by way of they look alike, like the protein looks the same, but the sequences are quite divergent. But they share the same function because their shape is almost the same, right? That's complicated. But BLAST doesn't care about structure of the protein. BLAST only cares about the letters. Okay, here's a different route, a route that I like a bit more. This is more about, that subversion, right? 100% match case, you start the same. And then from 99, you go to the 20% match case. And then you introduce the idea that you gotta draw the line for similarity somewhere. And then you do the 60% match case, the high level, real world, ambiguous, not a test case kind of application, which I think is also an interesting way to do it. And you can see, like, this is what I mean by handing out tools only when you need to. Because here's the thing. You could have done this by defining this is what a Kamer is, this is what a score is, this is what identity percent is, or you give them the tools as they need them. You don't need to know e-value to understand the principle of control F, right? You don't need e-value to understand the principle of exact matching. Just give it to your audience when they need it. Okay, it's an interesting case. Complexity is a negotiation for attention, right? The more complex your ideas are that you want to communicate, the more you have to think about negotiating for your audience's attention. You can't just do it for free all the time. So the more complex an idea is, the more you have to set up rewards along the way. Otherwise, people are going to leave. Okay, we are reaching the end of this presentation. I'm getting very tired. So if you want to just write these down or whatever, or keep this in mind, here is the cheat sheet for what I believe to be effective science communication. 1, if you are early on in writing, topic sentences are non-negotiable. Every paragraph, yes, every paragraph must have a functional topic sentence. I do not care about artistic expression if you are early on in your writing career. 2, know your audience. Teaching and sci-comm should be treated very, very differently, right? Do not get the two mixed up. Pick a subject and pick an audience. 3, give people just enough context at just the right times. This takes practice and feedback. You might not have given people enough tools. You might have given them too many tools. Ask for that level of feedback so that you can just give the tools as they are needed. So 4, science is a negotiation between attention, confusion, and curiosity, right? This is the fun of it. You are constantly in negotiation with your audience when you are writing, and you have to think of attention as a resource that you are asking for. 5, in order to make your content interesting, think of ways you can build and resolve tension, right? Building tension, that's excitement, that's engagement, that's people watching until the end to see how it all shakes out. And then think of ways you can reward your audience for small W's, right? Especially if your stuff is complicated. Break it up so that people will not feel like they are dumb, because that's what those computational neuroscientists made me feel. Every time I went to one of their presentations, I felt like the dumbest man on the planet, right? Or the dumbest neutrophil on the planet. And if I am made to feel dumb, then I'm not coming back to watch, because like, it is so important for your audience to feel smart. I've had comments on my YouTube video saying, I didn't really understand this, but I enjoyed the video anyway. And I think that's because I made them feel smart when they were able to understand things, okay? Like, understanding for sci-comm, that's secondary. People are not going to understand everything, especially if your stuff is complicated. But what is non-negotiable is you cannot make your audience feel dumb. That's really bad. Okay. Style and process are both emergent and guided. So a lot of my feedback on the writer's workshop segment, some of that was style, some of that was my interpretation of the bones of the writing, which I think even if you don't choose my fix, you should fix in some way. So don't take that feedback personally. And again, the samples I did review, I really did quite enjoy. And when critiquing any work, including your work, right? Writing is fun. Reading your own writing might suck at first, but when you open your mind, when you stop going like, how do I fix my writing? Like when you treat your writing as art that you yourself get to also enjoy, oh, it's so much fun. Like every sentence becomes something to be like, ooh, I can increase the drama a little here. I can tune this to be a little more dramatic. I can tune this to be a little more concise. I can play with the timing of certain things. Like if there's a really big, heavy idea that I want the audience to really stay on, I can add more filler words to buy the audience time to sit with some really crazy important idea. Or I can cut an idea short if I want it to be shocking, right? There's so much dimensionality to writing. Like people think science writing is boring. It's not. It's incredibly exciting because, while the subject matter is science, which sometimes science can be dry, but you as the storyteller, you have as many tools as the fiction writer does to build your story. So please do that. And, I encourage you to take this with you for any art critique because this avoids prescription, right? Like I am not giving you my guide on how to write. because I can't write like you, but I am giving you what I believe to be true for me. Okay. Above all else, if you want to write, just write. Ignore everything I've said if you want to and just freaking write. Like, the only way you get better is by writing. And then after you've written your piece, you can come back to the stream, come back to the cheat sheet, and just try some of those tactics and see how they make you feel. For the love of God, just write. You know, I remember there being cases, again, people who talk about wanting to write or wanting to make art, right? Oh, I wish I could draw. You can't. Do it, right? The meme. Do it, man. Do it. Oh, just do it. If you want to do sci-comm, just do it. Just do it, man. If you want to do VTubing, that's a little more complicated because you need some startup funds. But if you have a VTuber avatar already and you are looking to get into sci-comm, just do it. Just do it. I am talking to you directly. Just do it, okay? Just do it. Don't just study. Don't just watch this stream and feel like you've accomplished something. Actually put your vision out for the world, especially in an age where AI is crapping out slop all the time. We need more real people to put their voices out into communities and to have their work of arts to be loved, because that is in part how we love each other, right? The more AI garbage gets put out there, the less people will love each other because they're not seeing each other as much. And you putting your own work out somewhere is giving people the opportunity to love your art and ergo to love you in some fashion, you know, not in a parasocial way, but like the connection is what's important, right? Writing is so important. You know, it is, if you want to write, just write, man, just do it. It doesn't matter if it probably will suck. If you've never written before, it probably will suck. And that's fine. Do what you can do what I do and not publish it anywhere and curse yourself for being terrible, but then pick up that pencil again, because the only thing more painful than writing garbage is not writing, right? The only thing more painful about making bad art is not making art at all. And I want you, even though you know that if you've never written before that your thing is going to suck, just write it anyway and keep on writing. And one day, well, I promise you one day you will like your writing, or at least not come to hate it. Okay? Write. Just write, okay? And while this in-depth analysis on writing, because I give you a lot of actionable content here, right? I went through sentence by sentence. I've talked about theory. I've talked about mechanics. That might seem overwhelming, and I don't mean to overwhelm you and give you paralysis. Don't be paralyzed. Again, just write. What I'm giving you is a way to enjoy your own writing even more, because now you are aware of some of the knobs that you can tune on your speaker. I can make this sentence a little longer. I can make it a little shorter, and that will produce a different effect. Again, I can't teach you biology, but I can teach you how to love biology. I can't teach you how to write, but I can teach you how to love writing, okay? That is what this is for. Only you can teach yourself how to write in your style, but I can teach you how to play with your writing in a way that makes you love your own work, okay? That is what all this is for. Is the Discord open to everyone or just Patreons? So members get the link automatically, but like stream watchers, if you are enough of a fan to come watch me, if you're enough of a viewer to come watch me, you know, that's open to you as well. I just don't want to open up to the YouTube community in general, because then I'll get like a ton of people all, you know, very quickly, and I like a slow trickle. So I only make the Discord open for stream viewers, because I don't want to deal with having to get mods outside of me and Toxo. I see. So we stream watchers are goated. You are goated, right? If you are here, like listening to me passionately rant about writing, I'm grateful to have you listen to me, because that's important too. I wouldn't be doing this out into the void, or I wouldn't have that much fun. And okay, if you're a VTuber, you're gonna okay, quick as about you're gonna vent to the void for a while, but over time, as you keep at it, there will be more people. You know, you will find ways to make your appeal more broadly appealing, etc., etc., etc. Right? Like every time you start something new, it's gonna suck. Okay, just live with it. Yeah. Okay. Just freaking write, okay? And caring about every sentence might be overwhelming if you're new. I'm not saying you have to care. Don't. If it stops you from writing, I'm sorry. Ignore everything and just write. But you can care about every sentence, and that's what makes writing such a high skill ceiling. an infinite dimension for expression. That's why I love writing, because you can care about every word and every sentence and tune it to be just the way you want it to sound. And it is so satisfying to bang out a sentence or a paragraph that flows exactly the way you want it to flow. And I would be very happy for you to feel that way. And that is why I have done this presentation. With that being said, thank you all so much for tuning into this stream. I hope you all go out and write. And, if you want, you can share what you've written in the Discord. We can form, within the Discord community, a sort of mutually a supportive writers group, right? Like I have VTheorem. I share a lot with VTheorem. I share a lot with Toxo. Part of the artistic journey is forming those connections and getting feedback. So, hop in on the Discord. There's a content share, self-promo channel in there. And I will be very happy to have a space for you to put your writing out for somebody to look at, if you don't want to put it out into the wild open, because I believe my community is awesome and supportive and smart and intelligent, and you're all awesome. Yeah. At the beginning, did you stay away from covering certain topics because you felt like you weren't skilled or knowledgeable enough to make a video about it? I went to graduate school, which means I know exactly how knowledgeable I am. That's the benefit of going to graduate school, is I can tell you I am this level of expert in this topic, and I am very aware of that. So I do avoid things that I can't talk about with certain. The thing is, okay, here's an interesting case study. Abiogenesis. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a geologist. Oh boy, I am not an expert in a lot of the abiogenesis video script, but I make sure to tell you that right at the beginning. And I will hedge a lot when it comes to the geology, right? I'm already saying, I don't know jack about the early Hadean Ocean, right? I don't know which geologists are right, which geologists are wrong. I can't tell you that. I can just do my best to cite my sources, and then you can argue in the comments section. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for listening to me vent and rant about something I care a lot about. I hope you all found it useful. Look forward to the abiogenesis video, hopefully sometime in March. Goodbye, y'all. Goodbye. Bye-bye.